bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Good evening. Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Yeah, man. How you doing today? Today is Wednesday, January 6th, 2021. 6 days into the new year. Only 359 days left. We are live from a bunker that is somewhere in the middle of beautiful downtown Burbank, California, in the United States of America. I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States, hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the Planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. How you doing? All right. Tonight, we have a very special guest joining us. Isaac Arthur is here. Isaac Arthur is here. He's going to be with us at the bottom of the hour. We all know about the events of today. I want to remind everybody that tomorrow night is another Fader night with open lines all night long. Okay, so we will deal with the events of today, tomorrow. All right? All right. Crazy day. And yes, I will be speaking about all of it in just a minute. And before we get there, I want to remind everybody a few things. I've got to keep the lights on here at Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, and we do that with our sponsors. And especially today, and this show going on the air tonight, it only happens with our great sponsors. Okay, and that is Rivermoon Coffee, rivermoonwellness.com. That is Get the Tea, Ronnie McMullen, getthetea.com. Okay, Billy Carson, Forbidden Knowledge, forbiddenknowledge.tv. Very important sponsors of this show. TalkStream Live, Bill Freeze. Very important sponsors of this show. My Patriot Supply. My Patriot Supply. Virtual Shield VPN. Visit all of our sponsors. There's more, but visit all of our sponsors. All right? All right. Crazy day. Crazy day. I want you to all take the time during the show, after the show, head over to jimmychurchradio.com. All of our sponsors are there. Click on the links and support the show, support our sponsors. They are here because of you, the Fadernauts. Okay? All right. Let's get straight to it. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. You can start there, at JChurchRadio. The Sandbox. Any questions or comments? Anything. You want to join in on the conversation? Hashtag F2B on Twitter. Any questions during the show tonight? Just use hashtag F2BQ. All right, we've got Isaac Arthur with us at the bottom of the hour. We're going to be talking about physics and science and the Fermi Paradox, the expansion of the universe, faster than light travel, lots of ET talk. All of that is going down tonight with Isaac Arthur, and I'm going to tell you right now, I've never been more excited to have a guest on the show than I do tonight. Almost canceled the show, thought about it, and then I thought, do we go to open lines? Do we move Isaac forward into the month? Do we do that? Or do we just do the show? So, we're doing the show. Let's get to the breaking news. A rioting Trump mob invaded the United States Capitol building today while the joint session was counting the electoral votes for President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. The building has been cleared and is now secure, and the rioters are being removed from the streets of Washington, D.C., and the joint session is now back underway tonight, hopefully this time to complete the counting for Biden and Harris. Next up, this all went down yesterday and concluded today. The great state of Georgia, Georgians elected John Ossoff and the Reverend Raphael Warnock to the United States Senate, giving the Democratic Party control of the House, the Senate, and the White House for the first time in a decade, giving President-elect Joe Biden the power to potentially enact sweeping liberal legislation and push through cabinet nominations without Republican support. The Senate's party split will be 50-50, with Vice President-elect Kamala Harris breaking the tie votes. Dramatic day today. Dramatic day yesterday. And then right before the show, the drama continues. Twitter has locked President Trump's account for repeatedly violating its rules and posts about the Capitol Hill breach earlier today. And it will remain locked for 12 hours and then will further remain locked until the president takes down the posts. The posts in question are labeled, quote, "This tweet is no longer available because it violated the Twitter rules," end quote. And Twitter signaled that the next step would be a ban placed on his verified account, saying, quote, "Future violations will result in permanent suspension of the real Donald Trump account," end quote. That is directly from Twitter. And then Facebook also blocked Trump from posting on its platform for the next 24 hours. Trump will also face a 24-hour block on the Facebook-owned Instagram. Dramatic day. Let's get the show cracking. Happy birthday to today, the fabulous Thunderbirds, Kim Wilson. Today is 70. Tough enough. Love the fabulous Thunderbirds, Jimmy Vaughn. Our dead guy's birthday today is Syd Barrett, 1946 to 2006, died at the age of 60. Syd co-founded the band Pink Floyd in 1965. Barrett also named the group and was their original frontman and primary songwriter, becoming known for his English-accented singing and literary influences. He was musically active for only about 10 years. With Pink Floyd, he recorded their debut album, The Piper at the Gates of Dawn, and portions of their second album, A Saucerful of Secrets. Pink Floyd recorded several tributes and homages to Syd, including the 1975 Shine On, You Crazy Diamond, and of course, the 1979 rock opera, The Wall. Sid died at home in Cambridge on July 7th, 2006 from pancreatic cancer. He was 60 years old. Happy birthday, Sid Barrett. On this day in history, OTD, 1994, skater Nancy Kerrigan is attacked 2 days before the Olympic trials. On this day in 1994. Fader fact. Yeah, this is a crazy one. It's unbelievable, but it's true. In 2016, Eden, a British reality show about surviving the wilderness of the Scottish Highlands, was canceled after just 4 episodes. The producers decided not to tell the contestants that the show had ended and allowed them to continue living in the wilderness for over a year. And that is your Fader fact. All right. Tonight we have on the show Isaac Arthur. I've been talking about this show all week. Having Isaac stop by for me is one of my guilty pleasures. Everybody out there knows how I feel about physics and science and Isaac in general, and of course his amazingly great YouTube channel, Future Science with Isaac Arthur. And I found Isaac at the beginning when he first launched his channel, and at that time he had up I don't know, maybe a dozen or 2 dozen videos, but I watched him over and over again, and it was his original Fermi Paradox series. And like the first one was like, I can't remember, but it seems like it was 2 or 3 hours long. Very, very deep video. And I listened to it over and over and over again. Drove Rita crazy. And I was like, I gotta reach out to this guy. Isaac has got a grip. He gets it. He understands it. And he's been on with this for so many years now. But this is the thing. I have such great respect for Isaac. And out there chasing down physicists and acquiring knowledge. Just let me say this so you understand how important it is for me to have Isaac on the show. Is that when you do what I do, which is you're investigating UFOs and you're wondering about things, and that includes the past and the distant past and us and our DNA and Homo sapien sapien. There's all of that, and then you look to the stars. And the more that you research and you see something strange in the sky, the more that you discover, the more that you are pushed into the hard sciences. And when you get into the hard sciences, like I have, and any of you, if you ever want to call my BS, you can reach out to Rita, right? Conference, pull her aside. How much does Jimmy research physics? And she's going to tell you it's hours every single day. I'm not a physicist. I don't even understand the math. But I know that there is a connection here. And the more that you push and the more that you question and the more that you discover, the more that you go into these other areas. And what you find when you go to the other side, into the hard sciences, is that they are actually researching the same things. It's a bizarre thing. And in our community where we have consciousness and UFOs and Bigfoot and the Great Pyramid of Egypt, we have all of these things. Consciousness. And then you go into the hard sciences, and then you find out about philosophy and where this great divide is in the great divide in hard sciences about what consciousness is and the opposition to philosophy and the philosopher physicist and the overlap and the craziness and what Galileo thought or Newton and their thoughts of consciousness and philosophy and religion too as well. Well, this is what I do. And then you go and discover somebody like Isaac Arthur, who is speaking about everything that I'm wondering about. Like, Isaac gets it. He gets it. And so I am able to have a conversation with somebody, ask the questions that I've been wondering about through years of research. And that's why Isaac Arthur is so important. And what was so great about that is Isaac then gets turned on to Fade to Black. The Fadernauts are introduced to Isaac. Isaac is introduced into our world. He writes and produces content on what we talk about every night on this show, right? And it's like this weird, amazing, synchronistic relationship, right? And having him on when I know that I can just sit and ask whatever, and he can turn around and do the same thing with me. And that is Isaac Arthur. So that's what we're going to do tonight on the show. It's very special when Isaac is here. If you have not yet visited his YouTube channel, you need to go and do it. And what I would do is I would start at the beginning with Isaac and just go through his, it'll take you years, but go through all of his content in order and listen to him develop as not only a researcher, but a presenter and a producer of content. It's been amazing to see him rocket to the very tippy top of not only the science world, but the YouTube world and a content creator that is so respected today. All right. And I've been with Isaac from the beginning, and I'm not too sure when we did the first show here, but it was probably 3 or 4 years ago, right after he started Future Science. And so he's been part of our growth too as well. So Isaac Arthur is with us at the bottom of the hour. All right. All right. I just had to say that. I just got such great respect for Isaac, and especially after this day today. It was so great to see him and talk to him. Okay. River Moon Coffee, rivermoonwellness.com, Fade to Black blend. Oh, man. Rita, this is such a special pot of coffee. I think I'm starting to get my taste buds back. rivermoonwellness.com. Can't we have just one normal day? Is that too much to ask? Just one. Can't we have just one normal day? I don't even know what that is anymore. I don't even know if I can handle it. But obviously, today was probably the craziest day in American history. And we'll have to wait a little longer, won't we, for anything that resembles normal. Now, we all witnessed the events as they unfolded live on television and throughout social media. All day today. Continues. But let me say this. As an American, I was embarrassed. I would guess that the majority of Americans have no idea how good they have it here. They really don't. In fact, there are some right now listening to these words that absolutely have no idea how great it is in this country. The nations of the world, all of them, want to be us. They want what we have. They want it because they don't have it. And most of what we have and what they want is intrinsic and invisible. You can't even touch it. It's freedom, it's integrity, it's values, and respect for everyone. These things are what makes us great. Makes us creative. It makes us productive. And it makes this place fun. This is a great place to be. And everyone knows it. The entire world does. Sure. There are some great places to visit out there. Some not so great. But most Americans have never left the United States. And leaving our borders so that you can look back at our great land is the only way that anyone can truly appreciate how amazing it is to live here, to be an American. I have visited, I have lived outside of the U.S. And there's one thing that happens over and over again when you're overseas. What's it like in America? Are you an American? I want to visit America. And of course, you'll also get, are the streets really paved with gold? When you hear these questions over and over again, you start to look at the United States a little differently. And when you return, whether it's been a week or a couple of years, you realize that, yes, our streets are indeed paved with gold. Today, the world watched the land of their dreams, the most respected place on earth, come completely unglued. The impossible happened. Sure, we have differences. We debate. But in the end, we always work it out. We somehow always meet in the middle. And we grow. We move forward. This is America. And this is what the rest of the world desires. Because they know that they don't have it. And they know they probably never will. Now, over the last 4 years, we have witnessed the gradual and sometimes rapid divide among us. I don't know what everybody's goal is with this great divide. But half of a great country is, well, it's half of a great country. It is together, people, that makes us so great. It's being different that makes us the envy of the world. Divided? There are no winners here. Let it continue, and our country will spiral down and crumble into nothingness. Now, I want to be able to travel. I want to be able to travel to other countries in the future and feel proud to flaunt my American accent, knowing that we work things out, that we move forward, and we showed the world that we are the best place to live, raise a family, and have true freedom of thought. We can't do this or accomplish anything if we hate our neighbors. We have to get back to what got us here in the first place. We don't have a choice. If we do it, and we will, I know that the next time I travel abroad, I'll get the best question of them all. Are the streets really paved with gold? And my answer will be, they are. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black, January 6th, 2021. Our guest tonight is Isaac Arthur. I want to remind everybody that tomorrow night is Fader night with open lines all night long. Take a quick break, and I'll be right back with the one and only Isaac Arthur. Future science. All right, everybody relax. It's time to escape. Let's do this, man. On the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Email is jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. Stay with me. I'll be right back.
This is Nicole Church, daughter of you-know-who, and you're listening to Fade to Black on JimmyChurchRadio.com and the Game Changer Network.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
Introducing the Game Changer blend from River Moon Coffee that delivers a customized blend made specifically for the Fadernauts. If the game is rigged, change the game. It's a bolder cup with some bite. Game Changer is the coffee of choice for those that prefer an organic dark roast that is slightly lighter and milder, but it's still dark. With wild notes of pecans and chocolate with a rich, balanced, full-bodied cup that is roasted to perfection for a great coffee to start your day, as an after-dinner coffee or anywhere in between. Artisan, small batch roasted to perfection. USDA certified organic, all River Moon coffee is freshly roasted and packaged in the USA. Just go to rivermooncoffee.com or click on the banners over on our site and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. rivermooncoffee.com. Go Beckley Teppy.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact. KGRARadio.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can get our podcast for just $2 per month. All you have to do is click on the podcast banner over at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, folks. It's troubling times, and fear is pushing emotions, which in turn pushes health the wrong direction. Do you ever get an ache because life is uneasy? Try Life Change Tea at GetTheTea.com. Life Change Tea works on your digestive tract, helping to move food through quicker and comfortably so your health is spot on. Life Change Tea may not help with world issues, but it will help with your digestive issues. A glass a day helps keep the intruders away. So, change your life today. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. If your health game is off, get on by ordering Life Change Tea. GetTheTea.com. And while you're on our site, look around at the great non-GMO organic supplements. And if you're a sales shopper, go to our specials page and see what's for you. I've been drinking the tea for 12 years, and I'm sure glad for its health benefits. Again, that's GetTheTea.com. GetTheTea.com. The tea that makes you go.
Fadernauts. When you think about the future of our country and where we're headed, do you wonder about the food supply? I do. Disruptions in the food supply chain could be disastrous, and they usually occur with little warning. That's why the smartest thing you can do today is to stockpile emergency food, water, and other essentials. I personally recommend My Patriot Supply. They're the nation's largest emergency preparedness company, serving millions of customers for more than a decade. In fact, they're the only source my family trusts for our preparedness plan. You should too. Right now, save 20% off a full 4-week supply of delicious meals that provide 2,000 calories a day. Saving 20% helps too, doesn't it? Especially now. So go to preparewithjimmy.com and get ready. That's preparewithjimmy.com. There's no time to lose. Do it now.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. On the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Tonight, Isaac Arthur. That's all I got to say. Everybody knows Isaac these days. Isaac Arthur. Tomorrow night is another Fader night with open lines all night long. But tonight, Isaac joins us for another in-depth conversation. We're going to talk about measurement. We're going to talk about observation, entanglement, the Fermi Paradox. And I'm going to ask the question, what could possibly go faster than the speed of light? I know the answer. Isaac doesn't. Isaac is the host of Science and Futurism with Isaac Arthur on YouTube. He's currently over 600,000 subscribers. I remember the days. Covering topics like colonizing our solar system, interstellar travel, the Fermi Paradox, artificial intelligence, and other topics representing possible future paths and challenges for humanity. Isaac received his degree in physics from Kent State University, graduating top of his class at the prime young age of 20. Remained there for graduate studies before joining the United States Army and serving in Iraq. He also served as a civilian researcher at the Air Force Institute of Technology in Dayton, Ohio, which means he's a disinformation agent. After the military, he returned home to Ohio and serves as the chairman of the Board of Elections. When not working on his YouTube channel, I'd like to welcome back to Fade to Black, Isaac Arthur. Isaac, how are you, man?
Good, I'm doing great, Jimmy. Thanks for having me on again.
Man, that was a good round of laughs right there. I appreciate all of that. Isaac, look, today was today. That's behind us. Let's just talk. All right? Are you down?
Absolutely.
All right. Oh, man. Okay. I need these next 2.5 hours, and I can see that you're drinking a pretty hefty cup of coffee there. You're good to go. I want to let everybody know, I can see Isaac. He's sitting in his vast office and library. He's got all of his study materials there. He's got a nice big wooden desk. You got a chair behind you. You've got a great audio setup. It's exactly like somebody that has a program called Future Science should have. Isaac, very impressive. Really quick, before I found out today, and I know this may surprise you, it's been like 9 months since you've been on the show.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, right?
Seems like it was. Didn't we do something in the? It was Coast to Coast.
Yeah,
That's
well,
right.
we did Coast to Coast, and even that was a while ago.
Yeah, it was back in. That was actually right around the election.
Yeah, exactly. So if we think about all of that, it's been 9 months since you've been on the show. Since then, big changes in your life. You're now domesticated.
I am. I got married to my longtime friend, Sarah Fowler-Othel, and we actually just swore her in as a state legislature on Monday. So,
how incredible is that, right? And listen, I don't want to embarrass you, but it for me, we're friends. But to see your post on Facebook of married life, doing things, right? Building a shed in the backyard, whatever it is, right? And I think you did build a shed, didn't you?
We built a shed in a greenhouse, yes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I was making that up, but now that I think about it, that actually happened. That wasn't.
We rebuilt the greenhouse after it blew over.
So everything's good. Life is good.
Life is doing amazing. I feel almost bad because 2020 was such a rough year for everybody else, but yeah, it was probably the best year of my life. So
Yeah, I know, and so many out there are just not doing well. And of course, our family just got over COVID. I got over COVID. I'm still not 100%. My family got hit the day before Thanksgiving, and here we are. So that's 6 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago. And it was rough, and I know what we went through, and the rest of the country. People have lost family members and friends, and it's a very harsh thing to go through. It's just been the craziest year ever. Congratulations on 600,000 subscribers.
Thank you.
And that is a big congratulations. Did you ever think that? I remember. You may remember this. I don't know how long ago it was. I remember when you got to 200,000 and we talked about it on the show, right? And how big
years ago. Time just keeps going on. Didn't you do your 10th anniversary last year?
We did in December last month. Yeah. And so, but did you imagine at the start of
no,
right?
No. I still remember when I got a little email from YouTube saying, "Congratulations, you've got a subscriber." I was like, "What's a subscriber?" So, it was a constant shock. I never thought the channel would get that big, and it's just amazing to find out so many people have a shared interest in those topics. And I actually feel kind of bad for because I never thought there'd be that many people. I feel like I was being a little bit unfair to everybody else to assume there wasn't that much interest in these topics.
Did the thought ever occur to you? Well, I'm sure it has, that you might run out of material.
It was a worry earlier on, but I mean, I guess the one nice thing about the future is there's always so much more of it. We never seem to run out of topics. We get more of them in all the time. Sometimes we do as on a topic, we're looking at more depth, but we've never even come close to running out of topics. Every time I think we're getting close, we'll run a poll and see what do people feel like looking at, and there'll be 20 new topics on there that we've never even thought about doing that are all good topics. So I expect to run out of topics sometime between now and
infinity,
the heat death of the universe.
Right. Because and what fascinates me about the hard sciences is that today I think more and more people appreciate it and they want the content. So there are content providers out there, whether it's an actual professor or television or what have you, but that every day now in the news or in the science community, it seems like there is breaking news and discoveries nearly on a daily basis. I mean, dramatic, big leaps forward.
I wish they'd report on it more inside the more major networks for news. It sometimes feels there's such a focus on things that we forget about all the awesome stuff going on. And, like SpaceX gets news, but there are so many other, I mean, SpaceX is amazing, but there's so much discovery, so much new, cool, awesome, life-improving things out there. And you could fill up an entire news program with them every single day. And yet, for the most part, people don't get to hear about them. And I do think that's at least part of it. When you go into a year, it has been a rough year. We all know it's been a rough year. But at the same time, part of that's your headspace. If you're hearing nothing but bad news, it feels like a crappy year. On the other hand, if you got good news coming in, and there has been a lot of good news this year. We've made improvements towards fixing cancer. We've made improvements towards getting that first moon base. That is really back on the table now with that, the rocket launch, which ended with an explosion, but it was a very successful one anyway. It's hard to explain to people sometimes how it could blow up on the pad and we'd say, yay!
That was
that thing has potential to be that moon base in a decade.
Yeah. 2024 is supposed to be the year. We're in 2021. 3 years we're going to have Americans back on the moon, and
that would be an amazing thing.
Yeah, amazing. And there's another part to this too as well. When you take we'll discuss the Fermi Paradox later, but when you take the basic definition of the Fermi Paradox, so many stop right there, right? Just with the definition, and they think that's all that there is. You've made a living off of the Fermi Paradox.
Right? I have a friend who runs a show who also covers the topic quite a lot too, and he and I rarely actually found ourselves overlapping much on talk.
No,
it's a huge conversation, There is a gigantic universe out there that feels like it should be populated with life all over the place, and yet either it isn't or it isn't the way we tend to expect it to be. And that is, that has got to be one of the biggest mysteries going on right now for us all. So there's plenty to talk about on it,
Well, and the way that you originally broke it down, it was pretty interesting for me. I actually, your original Fermi Paradox Part 1, which was a very complex show, by the way. But I wrote out the list, right? Point for point, I write down the list. And I took a look at that and thought to myself, each one of these very brief statements from Isaac can last for a week of discussion. Right? You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think most of those ones we have ended up doing an episode on them, a couple on a whole series. And in each of those cases, we had to trim a lot of stuff out of the script.
Yeah, exactly. And that's got to be fun for you. In that, when you start at the top of an indexed list like that, are you writing from thought? Are you writing from thought? Or are you researching and writing at the same time?
I mean, I guess most of the research is done in the background, but usually when I sit down to write, the only reason I'll interrupt that there's usually three things that will get me away from the keyboard. One is a power outage. Two is when my coffee runs out, and three is if I need to switch over to Wikipedia to double check some specific factoid, like what is the luminosity of a given star?
Right.
How many meters is it to Pluto? Where you want to be kind of exact, but for the most part, if the script's not going well and I have to stop doing kind of major research on it, that's where I delete the script and start back over again. It's just my style of writing. So.
And the reason why, because I noticed very early on, and of course I see it episode to episode now and from year to year, but the thought is one flow, right? It doesn't sound like it's coming from three different writers, or you took a week break in between. It's all one piece and it flows. Do you do that by intention?
I think it's more that that's the style I go with, but we have some exceptions. Like we have a lot of editors who help out on the show, checking things through or making sure I'm not making nonsense comments. And sometimes they have a good idea they want to insert in the script. And the biggest problem is often trying to figure out where do we squeeze it in here, because everything just goes A, B, C, D. There's no real stopping point in the whole flow. And I sometimes think I probably should change that. But usually if I find a good stopping point in the episode, it's time for another episode.
Right.
So it can make it harder to insert things into them. And I think also I try to play the scripts too much. Once they get to the right zone, they've been edited on for a few days by the volunteers. That's when it's recorded. And to come back to it a couple months later, put the video overlay on,
Well, I want to start off the conversation tonight with probably the biggest and most controversial subject in all of theoretical, mechanical, any version of quantum physics or quantum mechanics, quantum theory, which is measurement and observation. And it's a crazy subject because it's the biggest, it's the broadest, it's the foundation without a definition or agreement, which is a very crazy thing to base a life on when you can't get two physicists to talk the same about it. But there's that. And so before we get started, I had wrote earlier this week, I want to run this by you. I said, so you're in Physics 101, freshman year, college, right? And you're all excited. First day, and you raise your hand to your professor standing in front of you, and you go, and he picks you, and you go, what is measurement? And the professor is going to say something like, it's the foundation of everything, but it's not in your textbook, and I don't know what it is. Next question, please. Right? And then you're going to raise your hand again and say, but what about Bohr? What about Heisenberg? What about what went on in Copenhagen? What went on, and then later and quantum, and measurement was brought, and the professor's going to cut you off again and say none of them agreed. They only agreed on the word, right? Now, saying something like that sounds like it's comedic, like I'm making it up and that it's just funny, ha-ha. How far off the mark am I from your first day in physics class?
I think we were mostly talking astronomy that day, and my professor asked me to stop asking questions and wait till we got to that topic. But measurement was one of the ones I asked about. There has been, since before we even really had physics, that big question going back to people like Bacon is when we look at something, what are we really seeing, and how much does that match up to reality, and how do you actually measure it, and what does measurement mean? It's a thing to forget. For instance, we didn't actually have thermometers or a concept of thermometers until like about 2 centuries ago. Mm-hmm. A lot of these basic measurement concepts were already starting to have us problems. We're already starting to break down philosophically before we even had the concept of quantum coming in there. And a thing people miss is quantum is such a word we all know these days, though we tend to forget the root word of quantum is quantifiable, an individual bit. This idea that down at a certain level, the universe is split into individual bits that we can observe, and they're fuzzy and they're hazy. And that is quantum mechanics, the study of the very tiny quantum things that don't have a broad spectrum of resistance, but these discrete finite things like an electron, a proton, a neutron, that they're not, or the quarks they're made up of, that they're not not divisible into different parts. You have to break them into very tiny specific things. They have certain energy levels they can be at as opposed to anywhere in between. And this is where we started wondering is, how connected are things like space and time? As we got with Einstein, for instance, these things, which before it always seemed separate. It's not just space and time, which always hear about as being connected. Energy and time are connected. Momentum and velocity and position are connected. Almost every property in physics, in the universe, has some complementary property that it's very connected with at a level of uncertainty. And these are the things that bring the questions of not just the philosophical, how do we measure something, but how accurate can we ever be with a measurement? As an example, we're busy calculating the nth digit of pi. I think it's like 1 trillion. But inside the known universe, you really never need more than 40 digits of pi because the universe just doesn't scale beyond that. You would never have occasion to need to be more accurate than 40. Even if you were trying to measure one atom's width across the entire universe as a circle, circle could be off by that amount. So it's very strange and fuzzy and gets even worse when you get down to the Planck level where things start to be the point where you don't think they can even exist beneath that scale as a meaningful concept. And that's way beneath the atomic scale. An atom's like a galaxy compared to the Planck scale.
And now, when we talk in these terms, if we discuss measurement, don't we have to have an understanding or a definition of what it is? And well, okay. Now, see, that's the answer, right? That's the answer.
Nobody likes tautologies, but you are actually allowed to have tautologies or circular reasoning in the science and physics. It's not ideal, but you are allowed to have them. What is space? And if you look up the definition of something, it says, what is mind doesn't matter. What is matter never mind. But you go look something up and it references the other thing, and it says, go look the other one back up. That's allowed inside the sciences. These are discrete concepts that can only really be explained in terms of each other. It's kind of neat that they turn out to have complementary things like energy and time too. But we don't really have a clear definition of measurement beyond here's how I take something and quantify something else in terms of it. The 3 laws of thermodynamics are very famous, and we had to make another one, a 0th law, that simply just says thermometers work. That is the 0th law of thermodynamics.
Right. Okay, so what is your definition of measurement?
Oh my, I don't know that I could give a very good one. That's
my answer. Yeah. Isn't that, how can that be when we know that measurement and observation is first off the foundation of everything in quantum physics, quantum mechanics? You just said it yourself. Velocity, right? You have these 2, 3, 4 points in physics that at least 3 of these have to be involved in any equation to get the numbers started, right? To get a symbol on the whiteboard, you're starting with one of these things, right? Well,
you have to accept the very concept of number as being valid before you can even start with measurement. Because essentially, it's how do I numerically quantify some property? And measuring length is not the same as measuring temperature or measuring time. And if time is variable to how fast you're going through space, then how do you measure that without measuring it relative to time? And it gets into a bit of a philosophical headache, but that's not the only one you tend to get in times of these things either. Quantum is just. Quantum is an existential crisis waiting to happen. So is relativity. It's hard to really go through those things because it isn't intuitive. It's not wrong though, but it challenges our intuition. What we see at the macroscopic level, kind of absorbing that is not really how the universe works. That is just how our local rules work.
Now, is it like the thermometer where measurement just is?
In the case of thermometer, let's say you were taking the classic one, the little mercury tube. We say, we're going to mark off grades on this. We know it expands X amount, and we set to 0 when it was in cold water, icy water, and 100 when it was in boiling water, and we just mark 100 spots along there that were evenly placed. Those are the degrees. But mercury doesn't expand at exactly the same rate for each of those amounts of energy or degrees in it, so it wasn't actually going up one. This is why it got to be. There was literally pages and pages. Well, I shouldn't say pages, libraries and libraries of various ways in which we've classified measurement down the years. The entire bureau is based on it, and things you wouldn't even expect. You've got this big ball that's supposed to measure distance, but it's a different temperature at the place you're at, or it's different pressure, so the ball is not as long. And you say, well, now the ball is wrong. And you say, well, is the ball wrong, or are we maybe looking at the idea of measurement in this case a little bit wrong in the first place? And in some cases, that's maybe a little bit more philosophically valid.
And then we have, for me, and this is where I think most people that start to get into physics and listen to discussions about it, it's at one of those points where you're trying to wrap your mind around what measurement is, because measurement is always part of the conversation, right? Mm-hmm. And you're trying to absorb it, you're getting into it, and then observation comes into play. And the use of observation, which we'll get to after the break, where it goes into total nutsville, but observation is used instead of the word measurement in a lot of physics, where observation and measurement are the same thing, and you would say to yourself, how can that be? So now let's move to observation. What is your definition?
I'm trying to think of one that's not going to be a tautology. A measurement being essentially the numerical quantification of observations. We might then say that observation is... I have no idea. How would you qualify?
I love you, man. And see, and this is one of the things and the challenges for me that I appreciate so much in physics is that you can't get a straight answer. Nobody knows, which is fine. But it's this sense of wonder with all of this. For me, I just find it so fascinating. I don't care what level you get in the physics world. These are the answers that we are going to get. It's not in a textbook, is it?
No. Well, I mean, there are probably lots of folks who have written on this topic who are probably a lot smarter than I am and explained it, but observation is a tricky one. How do you, the force is, can you ever trust your observations? You have to work from the assumption that, yes, you can. Not because that's necessarily true, but because if you can't even start on that spot, you're not going to make much progress. You have to work on the assumption that what you're observing about the universe is mostly accurate. But of course, we know it isn't. And again, that I think I mentioned Francis Bacon earlier. Here, the big point is you reach down and touch some polished table, it feels so smooth. But if you look at it in a microscope, these brand new microscopes they had when he was around, you could see these vast mountains and valleys of material down there. It wasn't smooth at all. We see the light bounced off at certain angles, but it tells you what the color is. And we find out that object isn't really green just because it looks green. That's the light that it reflects away. It's these other colors that it's absorbing. So it is always kind of hard to say with observation what you really mean by it, how much you can trust it. And I guess science is really about making observations and trying to do them in a quantifiable way that lets us start to check their validity. But it does have to be against each other. There is a certain self-referential nature to science. You have to start with the assumption it's valid. But you can't actually prove that inside a scientific context, of course.
Okay. Now, I'm looking at the clock. I've got about 2 minutes. How is it possible to, especially going back to 1930, 1927, Copenhagen, quantum and those parts of physics are now introduced. You know, it was a big conference, and everybody knows about that. We don't need to get into that. But there wasn't an ability at that time to look at particles this small. It didn't have it. So how does measurement and observation come into play with stuff that you can't see?
You know, each of these particles has an interesting story on how they are made, but I always think what my professor was said to be on these things. Physics at the atomic scale is about kicking a dog and measuring its properties by how loud it barks. Basically, we ran things into each other and see what we get as a scatter.
It's crazy.
And that's pretty much how we looked at all these things. Some of them we found as exposures on film on accident. Others it was radiation burns on things. Others it was tiny little things like how much an electron was deflected when it ran through a plate of gold. And we start getting way better at that, but our fundamental approach is still to ram things together really fast and then measure what slams into our detectors on the side in terms of energy values.
When was the last time you wrote an equation on a whiteboard?
On a whiteboard? Not in the last year.
Are you still smooth with it?
I probably could still get away with it. I just don't have any whiteboards around. I tend to use very old paper. But I tend to have a thing for handmade paper these days.
Right. That's funny. But I've always been fascinated with that. The trust that you put in your teachers, the trust that we put in other physicists, that their description of their algorithms, their sequences, their numbers, their math, their symbols is accurate because they are translating their numbers for us verbally.
In many cases, one of the things I loved about physics, it was one of the few places I could have a classroom, and the professor would, if you asked him why you didn't understand something, if you didn't correct him, if you didn't catch the error he did on the board, he'd yell at you for not correcting him. Whereas in almost every class I was at, they would get angry that you dared even ask that they might be wrong. And you have to take a lot of it on faith because you can never replicate it all. But you have to be willing to actually attack every premise in order to really make progress in something as basic as physics or metaphysics. These core philosophies of thought and how the universe is structured, and the only way you ever make progress is to constantly work on the assumption that there's a big error going on. You have in any field a certain feel of people feeling like they have to protect their own domain and their reputation, not be open to new ideas. But I'd say that for the most part, physics has remained relatively uncontaminated by it. It's not as bad as a lot of other fields can get.
Well, physicists today are the modern version of the priests from the mystery schools 5,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. Right? We're taking their math on faith. Mm-hmm. I can't read it. I can't translate it.
I mean, you can walk back through the basic premises in a lot of cases, but you won't have done them all. You've got a big row of textbooks on a topic. You learn some of them, you look into some of them, but you have to take a certain amount of faith and trust. Yeah. When was the last time I ever actually went and checked to see that the actual circumference of? I don't think I've ever measured the circumference of a circle personally and see if it really was pi.
Let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, the one and only Isaac Arthur. Future Science with Isaac Arthur. The links for isaacarthur.net are right there at jimmychurchradio.com. We'll be right back after this short break. More with Isaac when we come back. This is Faded Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station. Salt Lake City, Utah. Van Buren, Arkansas.
Hello, my name is Billy Carson, and I am a best-selling author and the founder of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Together with my team, we have built an all-new conscious streaming TV platform designed with every family member in mind. If you have ever wanted to travel the world and attend lectures and workshops from your favorite speakers but weren't able to, look no further. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. There are dozens of workshops and lectures from speakers you know and love. We have also included amazing categories to assure that your consciousness is entertained and elevating on a daily basis. Amazing interviews, ancient history, ascension knowledge, wisdom teachings, documentaries, conspiracies, mysteries, health and fitness, conscious cooking, meditations, finance, yoga, and so much more. To start your free trial on any mobile device or computer, surf to ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's Forbidden Knowledge with the number 4, ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Again, visit ForbiddenKnowledge.tv today.
Listen, I know, and you know, that you've always wanted your first crystal skull. Or maybe you're a collector just like me, but you just don't know where to go to find the real thing. Then I met Carolyn Ford over at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. Carolyn is the guardian of Einstein, one of the most respected ancient crystal skulls in the world. All of her unique skulls have been imprinted sitting with Einstein in his sacred lodge and are carved from the finest gemstone and materials. Imprinting is the process of receiving the ancient wisdom from the master skull or master computer, Einstein, the ancient crystal skull. To see Carolyn's current collection of crystal skulls, just visit her store at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com or click on the banner over on our site. Don't forget to use the promo code Jimmy at checkout to receive 10% off of your order today. That's promo code Jimmy. Finding your first or next crystal skull is easy. Just visit EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roasted to the dark side of fade to black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Yes, River Moon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA Digital Broadcast Station.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And this is Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
Yes.
We are of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can become an official Fadernaut by just going to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hello, this is Serena Wright Taylor from Conscious Life Expo, and you're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, who holds the Lucky Pony record for the best astrological chart since 1963. True story.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Isaac Arthur is here. Tomorrow night, Fader Night. Open lines all night long. Tonight, Future Science with Isaac Arthur. And right before the break, talking about, probably, just to take us back to where we were, measurement and observation, the foundation of all of the quantum sciences, it's right there. Okay, so when we understand that, and there is no definitions, Isaac, but then we get to, as we're starting to absorb what measurement and observation is, then the wrench gets thrown into this, which is this, that an observation of a particle can do a couple of things. And one of them, jumping into the multi-world, multiverse side of things, is that another duplicate at that moment of observation is created somewhere else. Now, just the suggestion of that is so science fiction, right? It is such a crazy thing for somebody normal to even understand, because they're not, the physicists of the world are not suggesting something that is unbelievable, right? Or that you're misunderstanding. They are saying exactly that, right? Right now,
close.
Yeah,
close.
yeah, and the observation could be your dog, right? It doesn't, or whatever, right? It's just right, anything.
Well, everything, yeah.
Right. Now this starts to get too much. Can we simplify this just a little bit?
We can. The first place we had to start, though, is your Schrödinger's cat, and that's the one where the cat's both alive and dead simultaneously. That is the Copenhagen interpretation. That is at odds with the mini-worlds interpretation. There are several different interpretations of quantum. Those are the two well-known ones. In mini-worlds, the cat's not alive or dead and simultaneously. There's a universe where it's alive and a universe where it's dead. In Copenhagen, it's both until you absorb it, but there's only one universe. Once you absorb it, it becomes one of those things. And those two are at odds. So, like, there is no alive and dead cat in mini-worlds. There's no alternative reality in Copenhagen. But the idea, and this could be one of those that gets people sometimes, we're not saying that the new universe has been created out of nowhere, in the sense of like some whole new universe is being produced out of absolute nothingness. There's no energy violation going on there in terms of like a whole new universe and all its energy appealing. We're saying they kind of always existed, that they are always going to existed, and that it's kind of that we're only seeing the bits of all dimensions that, imagine a million sheets of paper, each with its own little world line and theories of events going on. They're just stacked next to each other, and they overlap in a couple places where you have simultaneous events. So you have all these different alternate futures, and you also have alternate pasts too, which is something we don't really talk about as much, but also follows from most of those interpretations too, is that same as one event can lead to many different futures, depending on how it happens, a given moment of time could have had many different pasts that all led up to the same event. You know, a bit of water rolls downhill from any given side of a crater, still gets to the bottom. So that at any given moment, it's more like if you think of a bunch of strings stretching from a ceiling, like on a loom, and you put a ring around all of those, and that, the holds them all together nice and tight where you're at. They stretch off to the sides, front and back. That ring might be the current event you're in, and all those world lines branch off forward and backwards when you're in time. But the kind of notion is you're really more navigating your way through every single possible configuration of matter and energy at all. And so your universe, your world line, or you would think of it as, is basically just the path you take through every possible conceivable state, all of which do exist. That is one version of mini-wars. There's a lot of versions of that too, but we can't prove any of them. We don't have any evidence saying which one is which. We know what the matter seems to do, and we know that each of those interpretations and most of the other ones properly explain it, but we can't verify which one it is. We don't know if it's Copenhagen. We don't know if it's mini-worlds. We don't know if it's one of the other ones. And there isn't any evidence backing any of them at this time in terms of which one it might be.
The observation of said particle and creating at that exact moment, another identical particle. Is this what brings in the possibility of not only the multiverse, but alternate versions of you? And if that is the case, one has to ask, where are these worlds physically? Where do they exist? And why don't we see them?
At right angles to reality. There is a thought inside string theory, for instance, which is another theory that we don't have any evidence to back up, that we can only really see the three, dimensions around us that are physical dimensions, but they also have the ones going, if you would, up or down or left or at right angles to reality, a spin board, whatever you for. That these are actually things you could step to back and forth between them, like brains. They'll refer to membranes of reality on which universes might lie. But again, we don't know any way to get back and forth between them. And there's no guarantee that you really are getting anything back and forth between them either. But if we could find a way to travel between them, it might be very handy. But in theory, there's just so many of them. If every single possible state is possible, I think it works out to be 10 to the 10 to the 77 possible options. And that's just for one observable universe. And we have no real reason to think that would be the limitation on it either. Our observable universe is probably only a very tiny portion of this universe, which has nothing to do with the other alternate realities. Although if this universe is infinite, you'd also have the exact same effect there where everything possible also happened.
Well, and that number is so big, you might as well call it infinite.
Yeah.
I mean,
if you wrote it down on paper, it would collapse into a black hole.
Yes, that is a big, big number. Okay. Then there is the question of entanglement, which all happens at the same part of this conversation. So the observation happens, and the particle is created, and at that point, that particle is also entangled. So, okay, let's start there. When I hear a physicist say, and this was, of course, Einstein's spooky action at a distance comment, right? Okay. When that happens and the entangled particles are there, and a physicist says something crazy like this, it doesn't matter about the distance. It could be close. It could be on the other side of the galaxy or the other side of the universe. But the interaction is instant. Now, how is it? There is no measurement or observation of a particle on the other side of the galaxy or on the other side of the solar system.
Proven that either. We know it's very, very fast, but we haven't actually proven it's instant yet. That would be very hard to prove. It would just be a very short period of time, for instance. Anytime you're trying to prove anything involves zero or infinity, it gets very difficult. But an analogy I use, and it's not the best from a strictly theoretical standpoint, but it works pretty well, is when we create two particles, or we do something that causes two or more particles to be involved, like an up and down antiparticle pair to come into existence, those are entangled until we observe one. And they have a pair of features that are going to have to be matched up. Basically, they might have to equate to zero. One is spinning upward, the other is spinning downward, or clockwise and counterclockwise, if you prefer. And we don't know which one's which. And quantum's telling us that there isn't actually a which yet, that it hasn't been determined. They're both simultaneously, both of those, until we actually check. That's Copenhagen. Many worlds that actually isn't the case. There's one where it's up and one where it's down, and there's no universe where it's flipped. But we think that is decided instantaneously, or at least you can determine them instantaneously. But the analogy I use to try to make it a little bit more understandable in a real-world context is, imagine if I had a piece of paper onto which I'd written a 0 and a 1, and I ripped that sheet of paper in half, and I attached a note to it in a letter that said, I've written 0 or 1 on 2 letters. I'm sending you 1. I'm sending another to your friend who lives on Alpha Centauri. The moment you open that letter up and see your 1 and the explanation, you know the other guy has a 0, even though you can't have that confirmed for the 4 years it takes him to send that message.
At the speed of light. Right.
Yes. So, but you know that instantaneously. That information has traveled to you faster than the speed of light. You know what the answer is to it. That's a trivial example, of course, but what we're saying is that's what's happening with these particles, only is spooky because they're actually not determined yet. That letter was a 0 and a 1. It always was, right? These were a 0 and a 1 both until I opened it up, and now the other one on the other side of the universe knows it's the other one. The one was a 0 and a 1. This was 0 and 1. I opened it up. It says 0. Other side of the universe, someone in this letter suddenly says 1. That's what is being said by the spooky action at distance. Same analogy, but what's the mechanism of transit? And we don't know. I think I can't remember his name at the moment, and I should, but he was suggesting we might have wormholes. Leonard Susskind. That might be little tiny wormholes. That's the EP equals EPRP theory presented. And that's one of the more interesting scenarios I've heard for it. But the question is always, how do we prove this? And it's been something that we haven't been able to figure out yet, is how to actually create a provable test to find out which of these interpretations of quantum is right, and to figure out, again, why does it do this? We don't know.
Couldn't you do it with a deck of cards and you and I sitting in the same room, and that we both have hearts, or we both don't?
Yeah. If you're essentially counting cards, you know which one the other guy had. But the thing is, you would always have had that card. It didn't change magically. The notion here is that I'm holding the one-eyed jack in my hand. You got a two-eyed jack, and so I know that I've got one because you had the other one. But what we're saying here is that I didn't know which one mine was, and it really wasn't determined until I looked at it.
That's my point.
Now yours
yes, exactly. Couldn't we do that with a deck of cards? Keep them face down.
Well, you can't really entangle something as big as, well, at least we can't entangle something that big yet. So we have to work with individual atoms. So
now that takes me to my next question. Nice segue. You should do this for a living, by the way. You're really good. Is this, how tall are you?
5'9".
You're 5'9". And what's your weight?
220.
220. That's a lot of particles, right?
Yes.
Am I observing you right now? I am. Wait. Okay, let's pretend we're in the same room. Right now I feel like we're in the same room. And I look at you. You look at me. Are we now, particle for particle, recreated instantaneously somewhere else?
I don't think we could say it that way. We can say what do we mean by we?
What? You're made of the same particles as all the other particles. As far as I know, you don't have a makeup of special particles.
We assume that, yeah. I mean, we don't technically have a way of checking without checking me individually, but we assume that I'm made of the same basic matter as every other object in this room and in the universe. But how that information is transmitted in our case, well, we know what's going on. Photons are being absorbed by semiconductors. They would get turned into an electrical signal, etc., sent to the screen. That same kind of thing is basically what's happening with your eyeballs, too. The photons will be absorbed by your eyeballs in the cones. I don't know if those are natural semiconductors because I'm not an optometrist, but same basic process. Electric signal sent to your brain, interpreted as an image. It's an amazingly complex process, but it does seem to do a good job of relaying the image. But, of course, the image is not accurate. We think of each other by the image that we produce, but that's a very inaccurate real image. We all share that a visual look would be, but I'm not seeing you in infrared, for instance, or ultraviolet or radio. We do audio strictly by, sound, but like a cat, they have stereoscopic hearing. They have more of a three-dimensional image of what's going on. Their reality is different than ours. They can't see as many colors as us. I've memory shows they're dichromatic. We're trichromatic. We see three colors, red, green, blue. They see, I'm not sure which ones, but deer, for instance, can't see orange. Very different universe in that they observe than us. Same place, we assume, but neither one of them is really all that real. It's a very limited view onto reality.
But so if we take, let's just go with observation, and we go with entanglement, and we are observing each other, and particles are particles, then that would say to me, or anybody else that's being rational about these thoughts and theories, is that there is now an entangled version of you. There would have to be.
No. Well, every time you absorb something, any entanglement it was had is over. Right? The entanglement is a state. Something creates an entangled state. Right? A state being whatever the particles happen to be in, how they're lined up, how the deck is shuffled. The moment you absorb it, and you pull a card over, the entanglement is over. You can recreate another entanglement, but that entanglement is done. So, for instance, if I was absorbing you and you were entangled, the moment I absorb you, that entanglement ceases. Now, new entanglements are going on, doubtless, but the one that we specifically created will end the moment we absorb it. Although, not necessarily the moment we absorb it, because it can potentially be backward in time, too. But that's probably a conversation for another time.
Well, and so, exactly. And if we take these concepts and you even go back to the simplicity of Schrodinger's cat, you're observing a cat. I'm observing you. So, right? And
we have a whole one of them. Wait, knows one. What if the guy who's observing the cat is in a room with the door shut?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Who is doing the absorbing?
Right. Who is
the ultimate absorber was another case, too. Is it does the universe change? Like, we've determined if the cat's alive or dead here on Earth, but someone who's observing Earth from a billion light years away hasn't yet. So that cat should still be entangled, we think. Maybe that cat is still alive and dead, and I'm still either sad or happy that my cat is dead. And that hasn't been determined yet. A guy a billion light years away looks at it, and now it's determined for him. Was I still in a state of both until he absorbed me? We don't know. You know, it's is there a final, is there a event that is actually solid, say something where the event has specifically happened and is now occurred? Or is it always blowing around like that and not determined until someone sees it? What qualifies as a legitimate observer, and what makes an observer? Is it just an event, or does the observer require a special quality? Is there such a real thing as an observer as opposed to just some other event taking place?
Have you ever pondered if all of this plays out, right? Can't prove, we may never prove a lot of this, but the equations and the math say it is so. That maybe ghosts are part of physics, are part of these dimensions that are immeasurable, and are
we have ghost particles and virtual particles built into the theories already.
You got to throw that in. Okay. Yeah. But have you ever wondered about that all of these multi-worlds and multiverses and things may be some of these other parts of the paranormal and supernatural that we've apparently been seeing for, right?
Trying to be as rational as you can about it, because it's not so much that that's necessarily right. You go into these things skeptical, because to some degree, it's almost the only way to maintain sanity. No one goes into something like physics without trying to be, basically, you're motivated by the universe is a strange place and I want to understand it. It's beautiful, it's wonderful, I want to know more about it. So you should be going into it saying things like, ghosts might exist, Yeti might exist. All these things should come to you as saying, I hope they do. What a cool universe it would be.
Right.
But you kind of have to approach it skeptically, both because that's good science and because you will go through any number of, if you're applying a major in physics, prepare to just go through existential crisis after existential crisis until you get them to the point where it's like walking. You just get used to it.
And how is it possible to be pragmatic and black and white in the hard sciences as a physicist, right? Because it's the numbers that you believe in. How is it possible to stay pragmatic when you're talking about the multiverse? When you're talking about Schrodinger's cat, you're talking about entanglement, where we're getting way out there in concept.
I mean, I guess to some degree, probably the psychologist's answer would be you get really good at compartmentalizing. But, it is, again, how does any of us deal with these things? We all, at least I hope, we all get a chance in life to spend a lot of time thinking about all these strange aspects of reality in which we live. And, of course, how do you get up the next day and go into work? How do you make yourself breakfast and just go back to normal when you've had some existential crisis where someone's just come by and said, that's not how time works. That is not how time works, and here I can prove it. And you say, oh my God, he's right. That is not how time works. This is not how space works. This universe I thought I lived on, which is my little town that people tell me is even bigger. None of us remember the existential shock of realizing the planet we live on is a big sphere. But you didn't know that when you were 2. You never really thought it was flat, maybe, but your universe was your backyard, your house. Now it's 7 billion people. And then someone comes by and tells you that's just a tiny, pale little blue dot in a galaxy that is an insignificant fraction of the whole. But you still have to get into work the next day. And you still got to go turn the car on in the morning, take a shower, drive into work. How do you do that? I don't know. How do any of us do it? It's a balancing act, but it's fun.
Now, okay. When we come back, we'll change subjects. But I wanted to ask you this. why isn't it possible to have position and velocity at the same time from the same particle?
Those two are complementary things. You can know pretty accurately, but it's not that you can't know them, is that you can only know them with a certain amount of accuracy. And the more accurate you want to be with the one, the more uncertain the other is. If you knew perfectly accurately where it was, it would be having infinite velocity, be somewhere else as well. But they're linked together. You can only be as certain about the one as you are uncertain about the other. But you can still be pretty certain. It's a very tiny amount. It's about 10 to the 33 or 35 kilogram meters per second. Very tiny.
and it won't work in an equation, right? You can't have position with the particle and velocity at the same time.
Oh, no, you can have the equation for it actually works out quite well, and we can predict that in science. It's basically why everything at the atomic scale works the way it does.
Right.
Why it is that, we have no idea, but the math for it works, and it works out on experimentation too. No idea why it does it, though.
I remember I study this so much, and I don't understand the math, and I've tried to learn it, but it was really funny. I heard I forget the physicist, but he takes a question from the audience. This was a couple of years ago, at the end of a lecture, and he says, "I'm learning physics from your book," right? And he says, "No, you're not. That's impossible." And he goes, No. He goes, No, there's no math in my book. You're reading my interpretation of physics, right? And that's the position I'm in. I listen to the concepts, and I'm fascinated with it, but I'm not a physicist, right? And I never will be.
Reality is you got to be able to do the math to really get to enjoy it to its full degree. We can talk about the philosophy of it, and that doesn't necessarily require all the equations, but to really get to mess around with it, you do have to have that math background, which sadly a lot of folks is not their cup of tea. But
I barely made it out of Algebra 2. Let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, Isaac Arthur. I am your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. We got a lot more to talk about. When we come back, we're going to talk about the expansion of the universe, and it's not going to be what you think. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. More with Isaac Arthur after this short break. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Do you want to be an official Fadernaut? Of course you do. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Just go to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com. Fadernauts, when you think about the future of our country and where we're headed, do you wonder about the food supply? I do. Disruptions in the food supply chain could be disastrous, and they usually occur with little warning. That's why the smartest thing you can do today is to stockpile emergency food, water, and other essentials. I personally recommend My Patriot Supply. They're the nation's largest emergency preparedness company, serving millions of customers for more than a decade. In fact, they're the only source my family trusts for our preparedness plan. You should too. Right now, save 20% off a full 4-week supply of delicious meals that provide 2,000 calories a day. Saving 20% helps too, doesn't it? Especially now. So go to preparewithjimmy.com and get ready. That's preparewithjimmy.com. There's no time to lose. Do it now.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA. KGRARadio.com.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Before we get back to Isaac Arthur, our guest tonight, talk to you about Virtual Shield VPN, because right now there are suggestions that our credit scores might be based on our internet history in the near future. The same way banks use data like income to judge credit eligibility now is how websites could use the internet search history in the future. Researchers studying the relationship between finance and tech found that data from your browsing, your search history, and your purchase history could be used to decide your credit in the future. If you want to prevent this from happening to you, you've got to use the very best VPN so you can keep your search history separate from your personal data. I highly recommend Virtual Shield VPN. You can see all the computers that run this show each night. In this studio, there are 6. There are 2 more in the studio down the hall. All use Virtual Shield VPN. Simple to do. Go to virtualshield.com, fade to black. virtualshield.com/fade to black. Click on the link, go over to jimmychurchradio.com. We have banners and advertising over there. And you can also click on the link in the video description box below. You will get Virtual Shield VPN for 50% off today. Virtual Shield. All right, back to Isaac Arthur. Isaac, okay, now let's change gears. I want to talk about the universe. And the reason why, the data coming in today about our knowledge of the universe and our galaxy, the numbers are changing. They're going up and up and up. It doesn't matter if we're talking about the total of stars in our galaxy or the total galaxies in the known universe, the observable universe, or beyond. But we do know this, and the numbers are getting out of control. But now the concept of the speed of light is getting strange, because apparently at the outer edges of our universe, those galaxies, that part of the universe is expanding faster than the speed of light. Now, let's start right there. Is that possible? Are you part of this group?
We basically define the edge of the universe, of the observable universe, specifically the observable universe, as the place where the galaxies at the edge of it are moving at the speed of light away from us. The ones out past that are strictly hypothetical, but we assume they exist, and they are moving away faster than the speed of light. And most of the ones we actually see right now, most of the universe that we can see, since we're looking from, is much older, has already gone over that thing based on our calculations. It's a funny thing is we always say nothing can move faster than the speed of light, except the vast majority of the observable universe is moving away from us faster than the speed of light.
And now, would Einstein agree with this? There's reasons to agree with this, but let's start with Einstein. If he was around, what would that discussion be like?
Well, we had already kind of come up with the idea that that's probably what was happening while he was still around, and that's basically the notion of the Hubble expansion, from which we predicted the Big Bang. But it was a little bit more tenuous until then. The basic notion is that everywhere in the universe, little particles of space-time are popping into existence everywhere. Inside you right now, probably. Very tiny Planck-sized ones, which again, a Planck scale length or volume is to an atom what an atom is to a galaxy. Right? They are very tiny, but they're popping up everywhere in the universe simultaneously in little bits and random locations. And if you go far enough away from somebody, there's going to be a good deal more of them popping up between you and it. At a certain point, the number popping up in a given second between you and that object, if you're far enough away, is going to start getting to the point where it's creating space between you at a pretty decent fraction of the speed of light. You go double that distance, it's double that speed. And at a certain point, it is higher than the speed of light. And this doesn't actually violate the whole speed of light issue, since the speed of light is kind of a misnomer anyway. It's about how fast can I move information between 2 points. And we say that information cannot be moved between anything faster than the speed of light. So it doesn't bother us that space is appearing between these things faster than the speed of light. But that's been one of those accepted ideas for a long while now.
Now, if we take, I want the audience to just imagine this. If you blow up a balloon and you're watching the balloon expand, well, if it was full of particles and you saw, that's what the universe is doing, and the expansion is happening and it can be measured. Is the speed of light, if I am next to, okay, we pick a galaxy, we know that it's traveling at the speed of light in the expansion of the universe. But if you and I position ourselves out near that galaxy, we are now at its constant.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not moving at the speed of light relative to our position in space.
It's moving at the speed of light relative to us, in the sense that it is moving away from us faster than the speed of light, or at the speed of light. If we were to transport ourselves to where it's at, it would see us doing the same thing. If we put two little dots on that balloon and that balloon's expanding, that's kind of the motion that's involved there. The balloon's expanding. One could imagine that an ant walking between two dots on that balloon could go back and forth between them, but at a certain point, the expansion of that balloon is going faster than the ant can walk that distance between those two dots. Substitute in a particle of light for the ant, and that's basically the idea there. Nothing's really moving, but at the same time, what is motion anyway? So it is kind of hard to say that that is the sole exception. And again, everything in the universe is moving away from each other. Most of it is moving away faster than the speed of light. So it does make it hard to say that nothing's really moving away from anything else faster than the speed of light, when almost everything is actually doing that. But
at the same time,
right? At the same time, yeah.
Yeah. So if you and I are positioned next to that galaxy that we know is moving away from us at the speed of light, we are now in that position in space, and we become part of the expansion, right? So we're not still, right? Space isn't moving past us. We are now in that part of space. So now we are in the expansion together.
We are all expanding away from each other simultaneously. Again, what it comes down to is little bits of new space are popping up everywhere inside you, inside the planet. But it's just so tiny, relatively speaking, that we don't notice ourselves being pushed apart by it. You know, we're being pulled back together by forces. When you get up to the galactic scale, it starts getting kind of noticeable. Most galaxies near us are being held to us by gravity, but barely. You get further away than about 10 million light years, and that influence of expansion starts to new spaces popping up faster than gravity can pull those objects together.
Well, gravity's getting thinned out too, right?
Gravity has to run that distance too. Yeah, gravity travels the speed of light.
That's right. Okay, so if you and I are out at that galaxy at moving away at the speed of light, right? You and I are there. Are we observed from Earth as also traveling at the speed of light? Are we now part of that expansion?
If we were there, yes, yeah.
Right? Okay.
But I should note that we wouldn't be able to see ourselves there because we're moving away at the speed of light.
That's
that is
right.
the literal edge of the universe.
Okay, we're at 99.999. Okay. So anyway, I love this conversation. If we were able to, this is your next episode of Future Science, by the way. I'm just laying it out in front of you. You can take notes later, but it's a gift. Okay, so now, what if we were able to fold space? I'm not talking about wormholes. I'm not talking about any other type of travel. I'm not talking about physical speed of light. No, I'm talking about folding space. So now, you and I are moving away from Earth. We are observing us traveling at the speed of light. We have that velocity relative to our position at Earth. Okay? And we folded that space back. And we step out. Are we at the velocity that we were at in the previous position? No. Do we pop out at Earth at the speed of light and disappear?
No, probably. Because you don't really have a velocity from that. If you were suddenly appear here, and keep in mind there's a lot of hypothetical on this because we don't have a means for doing this, but if you suddenly appear here, you should have no velocity from that expansion anymore, because that velocity is being caused by the space between you increasing. It's kind of like with wormholes. People will suggest if I took a wormhole and I put one bottom end, up in the air and the other end down to the ground, I dropped a ball between them.
Right.
So it fell through the hole on the bottom and popped back out the other one.
Right.
Shouldn't that create a perpetual motion machine?
That's right.
And the answer was no. It would actually come back through on the math. It would just fall down there and come right back up, losing its speed on the way down. Because
eventually
that wormhole still has to go through space. Yeah.
Yes, right. Okay. But if that is the case, where we wouldn't possess the velocity from deep space at the expansion at the speed of light, right? We come back here, we fold space. We're not carrying that velocity anymore. We're back into space-time here on Earth, right?
Yep.
But what if it is so? If that is the case, what happens if we fold space in the opposite direction? Now Isaac and Jimmy are here on Earth with our velocity in this position. We fold space to the distant galaxy that's traveling at the speed of light, and we step out. If we now have the velocity from here and there's no velocity, does that galaxy now shoot off from us at the speed of light? And we are, do you see what I'm saying?
We should appear and step out of it and have no motion, except for whatever relative motion there was locally.
So how could we ever catch up to the edge of the universe?
Can't.
You can't, can you?
It's gone. It's gone forever.
And it, no matter what we do, see, I'm trying to cheat science here, right? How do we get to the edge of the observable everything that's traveling at the speed of light so we can count some galaxies, right?
As best as we can. Well, we lose galaxies every day. Probably, probably about a galaxy a day, if memory would serve. That's how many galaxies are getting hemorrhaged,
So we will, the universe, and especially if it's FTL, double FTL if you double the distance, right?
Yep.
There is no way to ever catch up because when you get there, it's gone.
Yeah. With one exception is if you could make one of the hypothetical engines like an Alcubierre warp drive that actually contracts space in front of you, you should be able to catch up that way because you're crunching space in front of you.
But if you exceed the speed of light, you're beyond infinite mass and energy. What kind of horsepower are we talking here?
Well, it's an interesting thought, is because you should have infinite energy at those galaxies that are moving away, but that's what we often mean about, conservation of energy does not hold up at the cosmological scale. It isn't violated locally, but at the cosmological scale, it kind of breaks down. The Alcubierre drive is working by not moving you at any speed at all. It's crunching space in front of you. So the same effect that's happening where it's creating random bits of space to increase the volume of the universe, you're doing the reverse thing where you're basically crunching down bits of space, and that should allow you to catch up. So if that particular one worked, the Alcubierre warp drive, or a few other versions that are similar, that should let you actually catch up and leave the local volume of space, what we call the observable volume of space, the observable universe, or not quite the same thing, but the Hubble volume that in which we live. That's one of the ways you could hypothetically do that.
Where's the energy come from? Where's the energy come from? Wouldn't the consumption of energy start to get too big to catch up to the edge of the universe?
If you were traveling classically, yes. But the warp drive thing, which actually relies on negative energy, which is a whole another can of worms, should allow you to circumvent that entire issue. There should be no kinetic energy involved in traveling that distance because, again, it's random bits of matter popping up. If you're trying to go through those distances, then you have to move fast. You have to have that kinetic energy. But if you're just removing those, essentially it's the suggestion that we could pop from the one universe to the other side of the universe with floating in space. That's essentially how the Alcubierre drive would work in a case like that, only in a straight line. It's basically your warp drive a la Star Trek, as opposed to like the Dune style of space forwarding.
Right.
But those kind of let you get around it. But I am on the high skepticism side of the Alcubierre drive. I would not expect that to ever work, or any other things like wormholes to work. I've never found a negative mass particle before. Until they find one of those.
Yeah. You know who bummed me out about that? Him.
Right? He did. Oh, yeah, well, it's unfair. It's people say, well, you disagree with him. It's like, no, he doesn't think it works either.
He doesn't think it works either, and he can describe it, right? He's the one that wrote it up. He's the one that, and then, but it's impossible. Like, dude, you had me. You had me at one point.
Well, it's not necessarily impossible. We can't prove it's impossible yet. It's a wonderful idea. But it probably does not work. And it's a thing I like to say about the field is to say, aren't you guys unfairly skeptical of new ideas? Like, no. When folks feel completely free to publish that, and everybody else in the field says that's a great idea, probably doesn't work, but great idea. We're still open-minded.
You can have the patent. Just go. Now, if this is the case, I almost wanted to ask you what side of the fence you are on when we are talking about the universe. Are you an expansionist? How do you do you consider the universe infinite?
Yes. That's not a provable thing, of course. You can never prove anything is infinite. But I tend to philosophically work on the assumption that the sum total of reality, whether you want to call it the universe or not, is infinite. But I tend to think there's a pretty good chance that this universe we're in is infinite, and that when we talk about the Big Bang, that would just be all absorbable chunk that was point-like. It may already have been infinite before then.
Sure.
But there's also kind of a limit on infinity, because in any infinite system, where you're dealing with finite portions of it, you're going to start replicating. You're going to have things that are exact copies. And I'm not convinced there's a strictly philosophical argument that two things are identical are the same thing. How many can you have more than one copy of Shakespeare's Tempest? Yes, it's still just one copy. If I pop back up into existence on a complete perfect copy of Earth down to the atom with the exact same thoughts, exact same life, just by quantum freakiness in a multiverse, or the universe repeating because it's just so infinite in size that sequence of events has happened again.
Right.
Yeah. So in that context, I don't think a finite universe like the one we're in can actually be infinite in that sense. But I tend to assume the sum total reality is, yeah.
Well, particles can only combine so many different ways.
Exactly.
So there has to be, it's just a numbers game. There has to be
about 10 to the 77.
There has to be a lot of versions of us out there, but does consciousness repeat? Like, there may be a Shakespeare, but is he writing the same books? Yeah. Right?
And he presumably didn't. There should be a lot more versions of him. For every copy of a book that would be identical, be the one where the period was 1/1,000,000th of an inch to the right.
Well,
but that's the same thing, more or less.
The duplicate versions of us are not talking about science. We're talking about golf, right? or whatever.
Or we're having the exact same conversation, but I have one more eyebrow hair. Exactly one more eyebrow hair. And that's the only difference in the entire universe.
In that other universe, I actually have eyebrows. Okay. Now, inside joke. Will we ever, the current calculations, the current numbers, and they go up every day, but right now the high side of galaxies in the universe is 1 trillion. It used to be 100, 100 billion, then it was 200, 250, then it was 500. Now we're talking about 1 trillion. But with the expansion and at the speed of light, things are disappearing. At FTL, they've already disappeared. will we ever know that the real number isn't a trillion? It's trillion to the 100th power.
It will eventually be one.
Yes.
In about 100 billion years, yeah. Part of the reason for the number changing is if you're looking back in time, all galaxies are cannibal. It's roughly tied with Andromeda for mass, 30 around us, and it has eaten galaxy after galaxy after galaxy. We can start to see the trace leftovers of these galaxies we consume. So when we look for the far ones, looking back in time, when galaxies tend to be smaller, so that's part of the uncertainty in the number. Early on in the universe, there were more galaxies. Now there are more that are bigger and heavier, but we're losing galaxies all the time to the edge of the universe too, even as the edge of the universe expands.
Well, they're dropping off the edge constantly. Now, with that expansion, the chatter over the last 10 years has been dark energy, which apparently is gravity in reverse. And gravity is a fascinating thing. You and I should do a whole show on gravity in the future. That would be a great show. But how is it possible that over these vast distances of space and time, that dark energy can increase the pressure going out into the expansion? Won't it eventually thin out? Won't dark energy lose its juice? Is it possible that the expansion could stop because dark energy is too thin?
Sure. Yeah. One of the problems we have with dark energy, I was saying earlier that there was little bits of space, popping up into reality here and there in Planck volumes. We don't know that for sure. That's a popular one and where I tend to subscribe to myself, but there's no evidence to back that particular one up for where this is coming from. We know space is appearing out of nowhere. We say that this effect, because space has energy associated, is dark energy. That is everything we know about it, other than the fact that it seems to be expanding and coming into existence even faster as time has gone on. Where is it coming from? Could it run out? Sure. And we can answer that question as soon as we figure out where is it coming from. We have no idea. Is it leaking in from another universe? Does it need to leak in from another side of the universe? Or does it just simply pop up? Is it a property of the universe that, as they age, more space appears to them? I've even heard suggested that because there's so many states the universe can be in, as it expands, it needs to have more energy to cover that, and that's what this is, representing itself as. We can't say that it definitely is the reverse of gravity. That's not the popular one that's tied to gravity in some way.
Mm-hmm.
I would tend to expect it is, but we don't know that yet.
Now
there was so many question marks with talking.
There are, and one of them for me is this. Okay, we've got gravity at the atomic level. We've got quarks and electrons and things, and it's spinning around and holding particles and molecules, and as cells and you get bigger and bigger, like a Russian doll, where gravity, from the very smallest is holding it. Then you get to the Earth, right? Then we have that. Then we have the gravity that's holding the moon here. Then we have the gravity that the sun is not at the center of the solar system. It's actually moving around the center part of it's absolutely fascinating. And then you get outside of our solar system into the galaxy. We've got a spiral. Why isn't dark energy pulling the galaxy apart? Why isn't it that we don't have, when you spin something, why aren't stars getting flinged off the edge of the galaxy?
Yeah. No, we eject tons of stars out of the galaxy all the time.
The galaxy is still a spiral and has structure. And so what I'm saying is this. We have all of these different elements with gravity where we've got the expansion of the universe, we've got dark energy, but yet we have these clusters of gravity around black holes at the center of these galaxies, holding the galaxies together, when you have dark energy pulling the rest of everything apart. How is it possible to have this at the same time? I don't understand.
If it were even just a little bit stronger, and the Big Rip theory, for instance, says that it gets stronger and stronger with time, it would rip apart even the galaxies. And if it was getting stronger and stronger, it would eventually tear apart stars, tear apart atoms, tear apart quarks, which is an interesting one because if you start tearing quarks apart, you make more quarks, which kind of result in potentially another Big Bang right on the spot. but it's not strong enough to pull apart galaxies because the galaxies have a lot of gravity holding them together. But it's strong enough to pull apart galaxies from each other. Almost every galaxy in the universe is being pulled apart by dark energy more than the gravity is holding together with those other bits. But it's kind of like, why don't why can you hold something over the air instead of gravity pulling it down? Because other various forces are acting on it that are stronger than gravity is that location. Gravity is a freak force. It's very weak, but it's the only one that has only a positive influence. So at the galactic scale, it dominates things. Then you get above the galactic scale, and suddenly dark energy dominates things. At the solar scale, gravity is pretty dominant. At the planetary scale, it's a major factor, but it's starting to get weaker. At the personal scale, gravity is almost nothing. And we don't know why that is either. So,
well, to have influence on Pluto, right? And most people don't understand how big our solar system is. It's frigging big. In the universe, in our galaxy, it's nothing, right? But on the scales of what we are here, it's huge. And the distances going out to Pluto and beyond, and having gravity hold it in place for its orbit from the sun is mind-blowing, and it's such a weak force.
Our brains can't even wrap around the scale involved. If math lets us do it, but otherwise, we think about how big the universe is, and people say the universe is big, and they're still thinking of that entire universe at a scale that's smaller than our solar system, because our brains can't wrap our heads around that. It's like when people say, well, cells, beneath cells are atoms, and cells are a little bit bigger than atoms. Say, well, how big do you think they are? Say, if an atom was a brick, then a cell, like a brick you build a house out of. Say a cell is a house. No, a cell is like a city. They're made out of a trillion bricks. We have a really bad sense of scale because our brains can't wrap around it. And the universe is just stupidly huge, and it's still tiny probably compared to the rest of reality, probably.
And this is where we're going to come back and talk about the Fermi Paradox. We're going to tie all of this together. But is this where philosophy needs to bring in its influence on physics and science, where how is it possible that dark energy and gravity and particles enjoy this life together by chance? Right? That's the part that I think philosophy needs to get in, and there's a bigger explanation here than coincidence.
That's one of the ones that's popped up as an example of how we compare the Copernican principle, mediocrity principle, with the anthropic principle, and things like a fine-tuned universe. And that is also another one of those things that is very strange. So,
well, and okay, and we'll come back and talk about the Fermi Paradox. But is it interesting to you that the Big Bang theory is now in question, where it's even talked about that it's possible that it may not have happened? That's pretty. Did you ever think that we would arrive to this kind of moment?
When I was first learning stuff in the 80s as a kid, someone was kicking around, Eric Lerner was kicking around the idea that Big Bang may never have happened. And I remember reading that book, and so I've always assumed there was a decent chance, but the theory might have some bits wrong with it. Now, he was very into plasma cosmology, which hasn't fared up too well in modern cosmology theories, but the Big Bang is a loose idea for the assumption that the universe used to be a lot smaller. We can only look back until the universe is 300,000 years old, or it might be more accurate to say we can only look back 13.7 billion years, and what we see is a big ball of plasma.
And that's only because of measurement of temperature and radiation, and of course Einstein's original numbers.
Basically, Einstein, Hubble shift, and that CMBL, microwave background radiation. We look at that. We look at the expansion that seems to be going on. Things are redshift away, and we say that's when it was close together. That is not all the evidence we got for that. We have developed more of the years, and they're all things that would argue against it here and there. But it's currently the solidest theory we've got for how the universe began, and it holds up pretty well.
Oh man, I love this conversation. Our guest tonight, Isaac Arthur. I am your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. More with Isaac when we come back after this very short break. And we're going to talk about the Fermi Paradox. I have a way to tie it all together. We'll be right back.
God on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station. Salt Lake City, Utah. Van Buren, Arkansas.
Why is it we're not very good with our health regimen until it's too late? We don't put oil in the car until the engine blows up. When the body's out of balance, your health is not so good. Give your body some love. Log on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. Try our Life Change Tea, which cleanses you from harmful intruders. A clean colon is one of the ways to bring the body in balance. We also carry organic supplements to help you get where you need to go. So do your body a favor. Log on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. You can even visit our sales page to save some dough. Does anybody call money dough anymore? Anyway, if you're looking for short, helpful health tips, go to YouTube and punch in Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. So, log on to GetTheT.com, shop, get balanced, then learn some cool tips at Health Matters Now. You'll be glad you did. That's GetTheT.com.
Your contact for current news and trending topics. KGRARadio.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I only drink Fade to Black blend coffee from Rivermoon. Just click on the Rivermoon Coffee banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Promo code F2B Blend.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact. KGRARadio.com.
When you're in the house for longer periods of time, you can see them flying or running across the floor. Ooh, yuck. They're unhealthy, gross, and disgusting. Bugs. I loathe bugs. We keep a clean home, but occasionally bugs show up. Well, I found something that is tougher than bugs. Orange Guard. On contact, it kills hidden bugs, including ants, roaches, and fleas. Plus, Orange Guard is a residual repellent. All of the ingredients of Orange Guard are on the FDA generally recognized as safe list. Orange Guard may be used around food, humans, and pets. It comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Orange Guard, available at orangeguard.com, Whole Foods, and Ace Hardware.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why Fade to Black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What a great show tonight. Isaac Arthur, the best. I'm going to let everybody know I watch Isaac walk out. Got another cup of coffee. That's what I'm talking about. It's so great when you're on the show and I am able to just have these conversations. And Isaac, I'm serious. I study this every night. I am listening and reading everything that I can get my hands on, and all I do is build up questions, and you're my guy, right? And I have to vent. I have to do this. Just thank you. And is this fun for you to just to be able to engage in a conversation like this, free form?
Oh yeah, it's actually kind of nice. Is a lot of times you're on like a sciencey show, they already know the usual routine stuff to go through, so you tend to expect the questions. You always have something completely out of left field from it.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I'm talking about.
I always feel embarrassed about how often I say I have no idea.
Now, I think it's safe to say I have been looking into the Fermi Paradox now for just about all of my life, probably 40 years or more. when did you first get exposed to the Fermi Paradox? Was it because of Enrico, or did it happen after that?
Star Trek, probably Star Trek or Doctor Who. That would be my first real exposure to it. I didn't know the term Fermi Paradox probably until 2000 or so. I don't know if it was really as much usage popularly at the time, but it's the classic question of where all the aliens are. And you like X-Files, for instance, or Star Trek or Doctor Who. I kind of grew up on that stuff, so it was kind of one of those always a question. And it was really, if you were into sci-fi, it wasn't a question of are there aliens? It was a question of where are they? And even today, I tend to be on the extreme skeptic side of where we're having alien visitations, but I still assume they exist somewhere. It's just such a big place. And the question for me is always, are they anywhere close enough to us in space and time that we could ever actually have a chance to interact with them? Or are they just so far away that by the time their life and their civilization gets to us, the universe already expanded them off the edge of the cosmological horizon? And I have to say these days I tend to tilt to probably be more that direction, but I still assume they're out there.
Well, you have to. And if you think about it, how long has Future Science been running? 5 years?
Let's see.
4 years?
Six.
Is it 6 years?
6, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, one season. But I mean, it wasn't really a full-blown weekly show for the first couple of years, though. So.
Right. Okay, but that's the number I need. See, I'm going to put together an equation, right? And I need to start there. Let's get some position and velocity going, and we'll get some mass as well. Is this? If you go back 6 years, and I'm pretty sure I am right. If you go back 6 years, there were only 500 exoplanets cataloged. Okay?
Probably. It might have been over 1,000 by then, but not much.
Let me finish. Right? Because today, like the update from this month, it's not the catalog stars. That number's about 10,000, right? There's 6,000 catalog. There's 4,000 that have been discovered. They're waiting to catalog them. And then you have everything else. It's kind of like the expansion of the universe. There's new planets being discovered every single day. And now the numbers are so crazy because it's so simple to discover these exoplanets. That's the confirmed. But now it is generally accepted, I loved it when this news broke, that every star in our galaxy has at least one planet. That's a crazy number. And that the rocky planets in our Milky Way, that number is somewhere between 10 and 20 billion. Now,
at least,
right? Now, what does that do? It doesn't change the constant of the Drake equation, right? It doesn't, but the numbers in the Drake equation are now stupid.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, they always kind of, the Drake's equation, which had the formation rates, planetary formation, things like that, there were always a lot of folks who said it could be as high as 1-to-1. I always took to the idea that it was at least 10%, but we didn't know. It could have been 1 in a million.
Because then it was 0 exoplanets.
Yeah.
And everything was a guess.
I think our first one, I can't remember if we discovered the first exoplanet in the late 90s or the early 2000s.
1995.
Yeah. And since then, we found so many more. And again, we knew there'd be a ton, but we didn't know, is it 1 in 1,000 systems that's got a planet that's Earth-like? Is that 1 in a billion? And now it looks like it's everywhere, just everywhere.
So what do we do with this when the numbers go through the roof, and we're looking at the Fermi Paradox, where we know obviously it's a numbers game, but there's got to be life, a lot of it, just in our galaxy. But where are they? And then we have this, all the chatter with the United States Navy, the Pentagon, UAPs, videos, pilot testimony, Tic Tacs, visitation.
The new
UAP created by the Senate Intelligence Committee that is now positioned in the Pentagon. We've got a report due from them in 180 days. They are talking about this in a whole nother way than you as a skeptic, which I understand because you've never seen a UFO, you've never been abducted, you've never been probed. You haven't, none of that is so. But how does this start to change the way that you are looking at this and what may be happening right now as we speak in the skies?
It's always a frustrating answer I always have to give people is I don't let it change my view on it because I have to hold it to a certain standard. It has to be at that level where I can say, from a science perspective, yep, absolutely, this specific thing is an alien of this variety. It's not enough just to know that it's undetected either or that it's unidentified. I need to know what is it, not just what it isn't or what it might be. But as to what it is, oh yeah, it's strange stuff. You know, I don't look at the Go Fast videos and things like that and say, oh yeah, that's definitely a weather balloon. Well, it might be in that case, but you know, it's a weird place we live in. The universe is strange, and the idea that there is an alien life somewhere and it is one of those things that come to me more in a later era that I've gotten skeptical about at all. I tended to assume it was pretty common when I was younger. But we are getting to the point where we gotta start making real observations soon. I had a fun occasion to guest lecture at the Air Force Academy a couple months back, and you know, to the folks who are going to be forming the Space Force, the young cadets who are looking to go into that, and that is something that's on their mind too. So, you know, if it's there, we are going to find it in the next couple of decades. If it's there, it's actually actively with us. That will be, in my mind, there's no doubt that if it's out there and it's active that way near us, we'll have it pinned down. I tend to assume that we won't because it isn't going on, but we'll see. And that's one of those ones where I won't mind being wrong if I turn out to be wrong. But at the same time, we do want to be careful because the core of the Fermi Paradox is the assumption that the universe is such an old and huge place that it must have other intelligent life. Well, the Earth is an old and huge place, and we're the first really intelligent life on it. And we're related to the other stuff. We don't know what the odds of life are. We have no idea what it takes to actually cause life to exist. It is possible that that basic abiogenesis event is something that is less likely not to happen even once in the history of the entire universe. Or it could be something that's so common that it would happen on any planet within a few years of that planet forming. Until we know these numbers, until we can actually get out there and observe it, we just don't know. And so, you know, it's one of those things, whether you're a skeptic or you're on board with it, we all agree, go find out. Go get more data. Go look and explore. And we'll know better then.
Well,
because the only thing we're sure of is no one knows for sure yet.
You have written and presented every possible angle of not only populating the outer planets in our solar system, how we would do that, to colonizing the stars, colonizing with spaceships, and of course, interplanetary, intergalactical trade. Every single angle of alien ET intelligence and trade and life has been explored by you. This is it. You have presented some of the most fascinating concepts with this, but yet you think that there's a possibility we are alone in the universe. Are you a walking paradox?
Yes. The Fermi Paradox is called that for a reason. It seems so clear that it should be one or the other, but every solution I've seen for the Fermi Paradox, even the one I subscribe to, it's not a question of which one is the best answer, it's which one's the least bad one, you know? Because, again, it doesn't make sense that we should be alone in the universe. That's not, to me, a really good answer. To me, it seems like the least bad one, you know, from what I see as the available evidence. No one's really put one together that has an absolutely good reason for why it is. And mind you, it's not a question of, well, the answer is they're here. Okay, let's assume for the moment they actually are here, that they are coming by and all the sightings are correct, or at least some of the sightings are correct in a specific way. Mm-hmm. What are they doing here? We're not in agreement on what those are. There's a lot of suggested ideas. And how many of them are there? Where are they from? Why are they here? We don't know. What's their purpose in life? Why isn't the galaxy more populated? Why aren't they Dyson swarming every star in the galaxy so that we can still see stars? We don't know. And all it comes back to is that one of our basic assumptions about the universe has to be wrong. Don't know which one it is. It could be more than one, but something we're doing when we look at the universe has to be wrong. Maybe it's that the laws of thermodynamics aren't solid.
Yes, but that's exactly, now you're on the right track in that how do we even know what to look for? We are observing in our speed, in our frequency. We are looking for radio signals in our speed. They may be living on a whole nother time scale that is out of our frequency range altogether and may not be observable until they are here. But looking out into the stars, it's just not there. It's noise that we're seeing.
We have exactly one example of life that we've been able to study in detail. We don't know that it works that way anywhere else.
Right.
But we have some indications of what it might work like. For instance, if we talk about post-human or transhuman existence, we say, well, let's replace all the neurons in people's heads, which communicate at like 1/1,000,000th the speed of light, with something that communicates at the speed of light. And now all of a sudden, instead of them thinking 1,000,000 times faster. Well, if they're thinking 1,000,000 times faster, they're experiencing existence 1,000,000 times faster. So, the speed of light would be quite a problem for them, because then it's not taking 4, light years to get there. It feels like 4,000,000 light years. They experience time so much faster if this is a pathway that life would follow. Or alternatively, maybe life for them is, slow superconducting super helium, fluid helium on some rock out past Pluto, and life takes place in a time scale that makes tree lifetimes go really slow, or they observe mountains going slow, and for them, life only started a few minutes ago in personal time. We just don't know, because we have, a whole scientific example of what intelligent life is like is a sample size of 1. And we might be a regular example, we might be a weird one.
So and to understand this concept and to digest it, we are looking with telescopes out at the stars. And no matter how far away, let's say you go 12 light years away. Well, we are observing the old version of that. We are not looking at them in real time. Also, it's the same observation for them looking at us. From 12 light years away, what is here on Earth?
Astronomy is history.
Right. So if we are looking at the old version, then life could have advanced, right? 50 million years ago, but we don't see it yet, and we wouldn't know it yet if we are just observing.
If the newest place that life exists at, or intelligent life exists at, is the Andromeda Galaxy, then it would only have to have developed in the last 2 million years to be invisible to us, and vice versa. And that's the nearest galaxy. But for our own galaxy, everything's within 100,000 years or so. That starts getting a time zone where, with the universe being as old as it is, you'd expect that if there's a lot of civilizations here, one of them should still be around that we could communicate with or see, especially if they actually were getting out there and colonizing. But then again, that assumes they go out and colonize the universe. Maybe they don't. Maybe they go out and colonize the multiverse. It's a lot easier, if you have the technology for it and the ability to do it, to go colonize a parallel copy of Earth that's exactly identical, except the first intelligent primate, hominid fell over dead and never evolved, or at least would not for another 10 million years. You go colonize the nearly infinite numbers of copies of Earth that are identical, except they don't have humans on them. There should be a near infinite supply of those if the multiverse theory is right. So you have that technology, and you get that for your 4 starships have arrived at the nearest colonies. Why you colonize the galaxy? Colonize the infinite copies of your own world.
Aren't we looking to do the same thing? We don't want to colonize a planet that's already got life on it. Right?
Yeah.
We want
as a copy of your own planet. Go find one where the dinosaurs are still around that you enjoy. Or, again, why go travel to a distant world that you don't even know if there's life on it yet, except to explore? Now, to be fair, if you can do that, if you can access all these multiverse copies of your own world to colonize, that gives you access to so much resources that you shouldn't have any problem going out and exploring the galaxy just for kicks. Of course, that brings to the question of which galaxy you're exploring, since you presumably have access to an infinite supply to go look at. So it is one of those things where if there is life around, and it seems like there should be, it should be bumping into each other all over the place.
Do you think that I don't care about time scales here. Do you think that we will ever venture as Earthlings outside of our galaxy?
Yes.
Really? You think that's possible?
I do think it is possible.
I just...
For given value of Earthlings, because if it takes you 200,000 years to get to the edge of the galaxy, again, that's a long time for civilization. That's 50 times longer than it's been since the pyramids were built or since, the Babylon first got built. It's a long time.
At the speed
so whatever's
of light.
getting out to the edge of the galaxy, and that's if you're traveling at the speed of light.
That's if you're traveling at the speed of light. Most people don't understand the size of the Milky Way. It's 150 to 200,000 light years across. That's ginormous. Yeah. And so for us, and where we are in the spiral, we're kind of, we're in the Goldilocks zone of the galaxy, right? Okay. There are violent places in our galaxy with radiation where there is no life on any planet. It's an impossibility to
the
exist.
The statement generally is the space is very empty. It's like, well, no, space isn't empty. It's just everything it's full of is horribly deadly.
Yeah, horribly deadly. But where we are, we're at the edge of the galaxy, and it would still take us forever to not only get to the next star, but to get outside of the galaxy or even remotely close to Andromeda, which is our closest galactic neighbor. Right?
I think I did an episode that was looking at that idea, Life in a Space Colony series. It was traveling out to the edge of the galaxy and intergalactic colonization. They get to the terminus system. They're trying to say, how are we going to get to another galaxy? And you're basically a 2 million year journey, even if you get yourself up to near light speed. And there is stuff between there and there. The idea that there isn't anything between us, there's probably about half the stars in the universe are outside of galaxies. There's a lot of them out there, but they're so thinly spread. They're the tiniest oases, thousands of light years from each other. And that's a long journey, but it's not the question of whether or not you're going to go there yourself on these planned missions. It's the idea that if I've got some tribe that's sitting in Ethiopia, they're not contemplating going out and colonizing Siberia or the Americas. They're just going the next town over, and their kids go one more, and their kids go one more. It doesn't have to be organized. If there's territory out there and people have a motivation to go to it, they will eventually do so. So it just comes down to the question is there a motivation to do so? And of course, that is based on the assumption there's a finite amount of matter and energy they have access to. We don't know what technologies we're going to find in another 10 years, 20 years, 10 million years. It might be that by the time they get to the edge of the galaxy, there's no reason for them to leave it because they got better places to go. But they might do it anyway, just because if you got access to all those better resources, it makes it easier to make that journey. So
now, we are sending probes to Saturn and Jupiter and the Moon and Venus and Mars and just did the fantastic drive-by of Pluto, which was fantastic. So, but those are obviously not manned missions. No. Isn't that what ET would be doing? It's not necessarily with the ginormous colonizing starship, but they would be sending probes throughout the galaxy to see what is out there?
Sure, but define manned probe, Well, they talk about something that's not a man, it's an alien, but it might be an alien AI. We are wondering if there's going to be anything that really qualifies as a classic human in another couple of centuries. It might be that they are cyborgs. They might be artificial intelligences. And that's to be a pretty blurry distinction anyway. What is artificial intelligence? Humans are artificial intelligence. We're about as but will an alien that's coming here in a probe, would that probe be dumb? It might be. They might intentionally make their probes as dumb as they need to be just to get the mission done, because it's a little bit dangerous to send out self-replicating probes in the universe that are smart. They might come home for a visit. But they might be very smart probes. And there might be that is one way that they go out to explore the universe. They send out a probe that's got copies of their own minds on them. And when they arrive, they unpack, look around, grab a random asteroid, set up shop, and say, and there's life here, let's talk to it, or there's life here, let's eradicate it, or let's build up here, or let's abandon the place, or we don't know. We don't know what they do. We can only guess what we might do.
Well, that's exactly, if we base, what could be coming here just on what our interest is, which is sending probes out to all the planets that we can and hoping that something is going to land. Right? That's what
you can't even say with certainty that they'd be curious, though that does seem likely. You shouldn't be a technological civilization if you're not curious, but maybe they're not curious anymore. Maybe curiosity is a think they've bred out of themselves a safety factor to avoid blowing themselves up. But it does seem like the one thing we could be reasonably certain about with aliens is they should be curious about the rest of the universe.
So if with your calculations, I'm looking at the clock, you're going to hang for overtime, right?
Sure.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about. It's Isaac Arthur. He's not going to say no. What kind of time are we talking about once a civilization takes hold and interstellar travel is available to them? Then what are we talking about once you colonize one planet? How quickly could you take over a galaxy?
How fast can your ships move?
It could literally be like that.
Yeah. We could theoretically, inside this next century or two, there's a couple of technologies that we got in the next century or two would let us send out ships as fast as we could breed up populations to put them on them. And if we really want to, we might be able to clone and replicate people to send. You know, I could give you some scenarios where we have the entire thing colonized at 99% of light speed that could rely on currently known physics. I don't think we'd go quite that fast, but that's kind of the timeline. You know, a million years, maybe less.
The resources are there. The energy is there, right?
You can colonize the whole galaxy with just the resources in this galaxy without even getting into self-replicating probes. There's enough in this solar system alone.
Back to the Fermi Paradox. If that is the case, why haven't we seen it? And
exactly.
Okay, so, but is it that we could tomorrow destroy the planet, right? Nuclear exchange. We're done. It's like we were never here.
Sure. Late filter options.
It's that filter is the one that fascinates me the most. That even if a civilization makes it to 1 million years, right, of technology, right? We're in 100 years of technology right now. That's where we are at. But if a civilization gets out there, they have to survive killing each other, right?
They're probably pretty talented at it by the time they got in technology too. You know, if you're going from a basic Darwinian perspective, they probably aren't the nicest people in the world. They might be nice too, but we know two things about aliens for certain. One, they're not wimps. They are not wimps. They are going to know how to be aggressive
and how to survive. Yeah. Yes.
And two, they want to survive more than they want us to survive. They might be very benevolent, but still prefer themselves over us, or they might be really xenocide or like to go out and kill everybody, but they'll still value their own existence over ours.
Well, look, we're pretty benevolent as a species. We kill each other a lot, but we're generally pretty nice.
You are the most benevolent thing on the planet.
Yeah, but when we're walking around our backyard, I'm not really conscious about stepping on insects in the grass. Don't care, right? Oh, I'm so sorry. No, it's just the way that it is. Mm-hmm. And if something is that advanced up in front of us, it's not about they would look at us as ants, but they would definitely have a different philosophical view on themselves and their future and their own survival.
I think so. And I mean, we can say that they would look on us as ants, but that is a flawed analogy. The smarter we've gotten, the more we've tended to think about those things on the smaller scale. You know, I wouldn't go so far as say that intelligence breeds benevolence. It probably does not, but it does breed a higher consciousness about what's going on. So I don't think they would think of us as we think of ants, but I do think that there's a very high probability that they would think of us as way down the totem pole from them, and it's probably because it would probably be true.
Let's take our break. Let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, Isaac Arthur. We're going to come back and get into some overtime. It's kind of strange. I feel like this conversation just got started. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. More with Isaac after this short break, and you can go right now to Isaac's website. It is isaacarthur.net. The links are over at jimmychurchradio.com. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Here, and you are listening to my boy Jimmy Church on jimmychurchradio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I take Life Change Tea supplements every single day. It's what I do. Click on their banner at jimmychurchradio.com. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Yes, River Moon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hello, my name is Billy Carson, and I am a best-selling author and the founder of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Together with my team, we have built an all-new conscious streaming TV platform designed with every family member in mind. If you have ever wanted to travel the world and attend lectures and workshops from your favorite speakers but weren't able to, look no further. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. There are dozens of workshops and lectures from speakers you know and love. We have also included amazing categories to assure that your consciousness is entertained and elevating on a daily basis. Amazing interviews, ancient history, ascension knowledge, wisdom teachings, documentaries, conspiracies, mysteries, health and fitness, conscious cooking, meditations, finance, yoga, and so much more. To start your free trial on any mobile device or computer, surf to ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's Forbidden Knowledge with the number 4, ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Again, visit ForbiddenKnowledge.tv today.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Welcome back, Fade to Black, Overtime with Isaac Arthur. And this is always a fun segment of the show. Well, we've been doing it all night with Isaac. But it's where we have a more free-form conversation and just get some fun ideas out. Kind of take the stress out of all those difficult questions I was laying out to you, Isaac. But I appreciate your knowledge, but I want to. I just want to ask you a basic question. We sort of addressed this earlier with the expansion of the universe. Okay, when we get into FTL, otherwise known as faster than light travel, is it possible as humans to travel faster than the speed of light?
Only in the context of universal expansion, I'd say. But I just don't see any way we could travel between planets in our own galaxy in faster than the speed of light.
And well, okay, why?
Only inside the context of known physics. If tomorrow someone comes out with negative energy, negative matter, if someone comes out with a couple of different ones that might allow it too, but those are the big ones, then I change my viewpoint on it. But I think it's so intrinsically linked to time travel. It's so intrinsically linked to infinite energy supplies and things like that, that you have to start looking at as if we could travel faster than light, if we could break Einstein's basic concept of special relativity, then it's not a question of when we would do it. It's a question of why it hasn't already happened, because most versions of FTL allow you to go back in time. And there's always the old joke by Douglas Adams. They say, what year was time travel discovered? Every year, there should be, at that point, you're not just dealing with aliens from another galaxy. You're dealing with effective aliens from your own future. You have to worry about, is somebody from your far distant future going to take over your planet to mine it for resources? Could we travel back in time to when the Earth was very new and colonize it back then?
Well, you've done so many episodes on faster than light travel and have explored this subject so much that if we remove the backwards in time element from it, and alien civilizations are traveling at faster than light, we would never observe it. We would never see it. Where we are looking for motion between planets and stars out there in the galaxy, if this is happening, we would potentially never see it, would we? We wouldn't see any trade routes.
Possibly. One example that comes up is what's driving the spaceship, and we say you detect it by whatever was pushing it. If it was running on, say, a black hole, for instance, like a Hawking drive, that way you should be seeing all the gamma radiation associated to a ship of that mass at a very specific frequency. Same for if people are dicing stars up to make lots of O'Neill cylinders, then we should see big blobs at 10 micrometers wavelength associated with our temperature. If they are moving from point A to point B, we should see some motion for that. There's always something left behind for forensics. Maybe if they're traveling faster than light, we would be seeing a particular type of particle being created in their wake. There should be something. But if it was like Stargate, SG-1 style, where they just have wormhole gates, they open up between planet to planet, then no, we probably wouldn't see that. But again, with things like that, we can't even be certain they'd be traveling inside our universe. The math on things like wormholes works just as well for traveling to another universe as to our own.
Sure.
They might be doing that example I suggested earlier where they travel to their own parallel worlds. But if they are traveling inside our universe, there has to be some kind of effect we could detect.
Well,
it might be really tiny and beyond our ability now, though.
But are we observing this all the time and immediately thinking it's something natural?
Something completely mundane.
Right.
That's entirely possible. A problem with science is that we work from the get-go. That's why we say always be kind of careful of being too reductionist on things. Our initial assumption is that everything is cause and effect in a natural universe. That is the stance we take for a very clear philosophical reason laid out back in the early days of it, but it is still there. That's a bias there. We assume everything is a cause and effect in a natural universe that is a natural effect. And for that reason, if we see something that's real, the first thing we do is try to figure out what could be naturally causing it, which is the good approach to take. But
nobody wants to say ET in the sciences, right?
Well, don't mind saying it. I mean, it's not the go-to place, but it's the same with like Alcubierre. He was perfectly allowed to say it.
Right.
I know lots of most astrophysicists I know, they chat about this stuff. They're all raised on Star Trek too. Do they want to be the one who publishes the paper saying that's the likely interpretation? Well, maybe not, but the fellow, I can't remember his name right now, Jason something for Tabby Star, he came out saying it might be aliens, and we didn't laugh about that because it was the first thing we all thought too. It might be aliens. Probably not. My assumption was a scattered debris disk, But if you go there, that's one of the first things you go. That's a bizarre anomaly. And your brain just says, well, that maybe it's not an anomaly, maybe it's artificial. But you have a responsibility to try to look for the natural options first. But not to the exclusion of not considering the artificial.
Well, then you have Oumuamua. That's another classic example of obviously the first interstellar object. It increases speed. It makes a turn, exits out of our solar system. Everything that it did was
Rama from Arthur C. Clarke's book.
It was Rama. It kind of looked like Rama if you really think about it. Nicely done. But I'm trying to think of the physicist from Harvard who's been pretty vocal over the last couple of years with Oumuamua. Yeah, and I'll think of it here in just a second. But over the last 6 months, he's put his career on the line. That this is extraterrestrial. That this is an extraterrestrial object.
I wish I could remember his name right now, but I remember him. So I don't know if it was in the last 6 months, but somebody, maybe it was a different person too. But somebody was very well known in the field had said that he thought it was probably extraterrestrial or artificial, I should say. Good video was extraterrestrial, or extrasolar specifically. But I usually go the other way around it. As I say, if it's an alien probe or an alien device, it's broken. Because it's not acting like it should be, which is fine. It might be a broken probe. If it's finding other people's garbage is one of the ways we find other civilizations. Almost everything we know about other civilizations' own past is by looking at their garbage. But if Oumuamua was an artificial construct, it's a broken one now because it's not acting like a probe should. Either from the point of trying to hide itself while it looked at us or trying to get in close for a look. But that works. It could be a broken probe.
It changed velocity a few times. Mm-hmm. It did make a turn. Mm-hmm. It was projecting something out of the back end of it so it could increase speed. All of that was measured and observed. Mm-hmm. And having that occur naturally, you think so?
Sure. How do comets do? If you look at a comet's motion and you look at it strictly from a Keplerian orbit standpoint, you say, oh, that's not right. It's not doing what it's supposed to because it's emitting a rocket flame out the back of it. That's what happens when the sunlight strikes it and causes stuff to come off. That thing traveled through the interstellar void and collected a lot of cold gas on its way. That could be blowing off it as an ablative rocket tail, comet tail. Now, others would say, well, it's not the right amount. It's not doing quite the right amount that it should for what it did. But we don't have the very precise measurements on it either because it's not big. I think, we say it looks like Rama. Well, the thing was only 100 meters across. It's big, but it ain't no Rama. It ain't no O'Neill cylinder. And we can't get really good measurements off things like that. I'd love to chase the thing down, get a better look at it. We'll probably get more chance to see more of them. At least I hope so. But, we don't know that was not a natural object in terms of its motion. We just know it acted very weirdly. But then again, it's a pretty weird object.
And now we have fast radio burst. Again, trying to explain these, the first, that it's natural. It's a supernova. It's these different aspects of it. But now they're repeating. And is this starting to confuse science a little bit where you're trying to, make it natural, but sometimes you just can't?
I hope so. Yeah, if you can't, if you're looking at every anomaly and you're not finding something that's confusing and weird, then you're not doing it right. Fast radio burst, there's some phenomena that could potentially be it. But the goal on these things is never to say, well, this is the natural explanation, because you're not supposed to be trying to figure out why it's natural. You're supposed to be trying to figure out what it is. That might be that it's an alien too. I usually say the good sign that would be artificial is if it's coming up with at least two different hits that are weird that way. Two different anomalies you'd associate to intelligence. Because, again, if you walk into an alien workshop, you're going to know that is an alien workshop, or at least that's artificial, regardless of whether or not you know what things are. The screwdrivers might look wrong, the hammers might look wrong, but they're not going to look, natural. You find one hammer by itself, you might say, well, that, it's decayed, maybe that's natural. You find a whole workshop, yeah, it's artificial. And that's what I tend to look for these anomalies is the multiple things. It's not if it's Tabby Stahl, maybe a Dyson sphere says, well, we look at it and where's the radio signals for that place? Or where's the infrared waste heat at 300 Kelvin or something like that? For the fast radio burst, the thing is, what's the data that's encoded in there and why are they doing it? Why that method of signaling? But it might be a natural phenomenon. It might be artificial. The goal is not to say what it is to find out what it actually is. And that is a thing I warn skeptics about is you're supposed to be skeptical about every possible solution. You're not supposed to be going in there trying to figure out that this thing is definitely natural, because eventually you're going to come across something that isn't. Most of our experiences with things that are artificial. Almost every problem on this planet is artificial in origin. So when you're studying science and phenomena on Earth, your first go-to should be this is artificial. It's
yes,
just that we have examples.
And I did a calculation. I did this a couple of years ago. where I started to think about the basics, Marconi, television. You know, how long have these radio signals, the big ones, and television signals been, leaving this planet? You know, it's not necessarily the movie Contact. I went the opposite direction. I said, okay, 100 years out, what is out there and what do we know? Well, I came back with a number. I think it was about 250. It's about 250 stars.
That'd just be the yellow ones.
Less than 100 years away, light years away. Okay,
it's about 15,000 stars and 100 light years away. But
okay. Well, okay. Well, I think my number was 250. Doesn't matter. In that, because 50 years coming back, right? So it would be 100 years out. How much time coming back to us? So, that was my calculation. I went with 50 years.
You're doing a 50 light year radius.
Yeah,
so
50 light year radius, and I came up with 250 stars. So we should technically start to see some kind of response from now moving forward. We wouldn't have gotten it 25 years ago, right?
Every period of time, if you double the time that signal's out there, that means 8 times as many stars that's reached. So, like, let's say that we are not measuring a century, but 1,000 years. Whatever it could have got to in a century, in 1,000 years, it would have gotten to 10 cubed of that distance, or another 1,000 times as many stars. 10,000 years, now you're up to 1,000,000 times as many stars. So that volume of people who could hear us is going to just keep going up with the cube of the time that's had to reach out to them. It's not that many yet, but it's getting there.
It's getting there.
The signal gets weaker, right? It's going down with the square of the distance. But they say, how far away can you hear a signal? And people will say these numbers, say you couldn't hear it more than 100 light years away. I don't know where they get that. You can build something bigger. We couldn't hear it. We couldn't hear it with our current dishes, but we can build a bigger dish if we want to. They can build a bigger dish if they want to. You can build 2 dishes that are half a light year apart that could pick out the size of them. You build 2 gigantic dishes the size of a planet and pencil thin that are a light year across, and you'll be able to pick a signal out from another galaxy.
Right, exactly. So, and I have 2 questions. So, if that is the case, the first one's the simple one. The second one is your opinion. But how easy would it be at 1,000 light years out or 100 light years out to know the direction of the signals coming at you? Are they able to pinpoint into our solar system?
They should be. It again depends on how spread out they are, because you got to do that parallax thing.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. And if you've got if the signal is repeating over the course of a year, then you've got your whole planet's motion, so 2AU, right? Or if you just have a satellite that's in your L3, it's on the other side of the sun from you that you're picking up stuff simultaneously with, that's parallax for 2AU. You can pick out pretty good with that. You can pick out most things inside this galaxy if you're discriminate enough with that. But you're not limited to that. You can put one out where Pluto is, or in another star system if you text up for it.
And I only bring this up because of Hawking's big warning, right? You got to be careful. You don't know who's listening. And
I love Stephen Hawking for that, but I have to say he had a tendency to repeat things that people had previously said and had them attributed to him as original, like Churchill.
But if you were looking for or expecting a reach out from a distant star, what would you be looking for? If they are responding to us.
You look for everything you can think of that might be a sign of artificiality, but the way I do it personally, I definitely go with at least 2 different methods for the same reason, but I'd probably send a repeating sequence of a mathematical sequence, something like 1, 4, 9, 16, etc. in binary. Or I'd send digits of pi in binary. I'd send 1,000 digits of pi. And however much people might argue about the naturalness of, say, the wow signal, no one's going to argue about whether or not we've got the digits of pi, the first 1,000 of them, over and over again. That's not a natural number. And that comes along interspace with 1, 4, 9, 16, etc. That's not natural. And it's not natural. And people might come with a reason why maybe pi was being created by a neutron star. They're not going to do it at the same signal as saying 1, 4, 9, etc. That's how you do that. And that's not the signal, although that carries some information. What's that say? That says, here we are, here's where we're transmitting from, we know where you are, and we want to talk. That's what that signal says. Because it's probably not coming as a radio signal, it's omnidirectional, it's probably coming pinpoint at you. I would probably, if I was that accurate with them, I'd probably try to send a signal in something whatever their day length was too. Because you should be able to look at their planet, their exoplanet, and say how long the day length is. You should be able to detect that. You should be able to detect what their year length is. So if you're sending them something that's the multiple of their day length and year length, they're going to know that you're talking to them specifically. And you do that because it means they're going to answer. Because if they're sending you something that's in your own day length and year length, they know that means you already know they're there. So there's no point in hiding. That's probably how I would do that.
And so what about using light instead of radio?
Yeah. Laser. Well, that's what you'd be doing there. There's a laser communication blast. It doesn't have to necessarily be light. You might be infrared or microwave, but you use all of the above. You point at them, whatever you can focus down on them real well. And it just depends. Again, if you're looking at them and they're already transmitting like us, you know a lot about them. You're sending a targeted message at them because that tells them, I'm looking at you specifically. This is not omnidirectional. This is not a, hey, is anybody out there? It's a, I know you're out there. Hello. It's the difference between saying, scream in the forest, hi, is anyone there, versus knocking on someone's door.
How would you pick the star? What would be your criteria?
It depends on whether or not you've already detected them. If I was an alien and I was sending a complex message, maybe I've already detected their civilization or that there's an inhabited planet. But you're not really sending it to individual stars at that point. You're sending it to planets because
we can do that now. Yeah, we can do that now.
And I'd send it to every single one. I mean, if you're sending it with a laser, send everybody the message once a day for 5 seconds and send it to every single planet in the galaxy.
It's pretty fascinating that today it's one thing to discover exoplanets, but now we are, especially in the last 2 years, we've developed the ability to look at atmosphere on these planets that we can't see. That's pretty fascinating to me.
Certain wavelengths scatter off of certain types of molecules in certain proportions. So we can tell about their atmosphere from that. Certain wavelengths should scatter more off of land than they should ocean. So a certain amount of light should be bouncing out the planet based on how much it's torn that day. So again, you should be able to tell the day length only by seeing just the tiniest variation in how much light that planet is giving off. Even though you can't resolve anything about that planet other than it's a blur whose brightness shifts every 27.2 hours. And now it's a 27.2 hour day. You can tell a lot from a little pixel.
Now, what about? I know. It's just a pixel. It's crazy. But what about distance, though? Should we be looking at the closest stars to us?
We should be looking at the best candidates. But I mean, if you're looking to talk to somebody, you should probably try to talk to the folks closest to you first, because you can answer back for them first, and they're the ones you really want to establish a relationship with, good or nil, early on too.
Do you think that our first goal should be Alpha Centauri? And that system?
Well, it's interesting is we don't actually know if Proxima Centauri is part of the Alpha Centauri system. We've always assumed it was, but the first one to get there, yeah, but why not? But there's a lot of other ones. If you're going that distance, you go to the first place you can land first, but that's not necessarily that'll be the closest. You want to go to the one you can actually. We should travel to the first one we find an exoplanet around that we actually have a chance of setting up shop on. And that might not be Alpha Centauri. That might be Tau Ceti.
I remember this was about a year and a half. You probably remember this when the big news was Proxima, right? Oh, it's the right distance. It's rocky, and we don't know if it's rotating or if one side is exposed.
They get real casual with what they say is Earth-like.
Yeah, right.
That planet is less like us than Venus, or that planet is Neptune, and that's not Earth-like.
and that, yeah, exactly. And so right after that announcement for Proxima came out, it got blasted with a plasma burst, and the entire planet was just absolutely incinerated. So any hopes of now it's just a big chunk of carbon. Right? Do you remember that announcement?
Yeah.
It was so funny. Oh, man, we're out of time. But okay.
It's already gone by. Wow, it always goes so fast.
Oh, man. What's next? Are you in production now?
Oh, yeah. We have an episode. I have to get it ready to prep for launch tomorrow. It's Civilizations at the Beginning of Time. We're going to try to figure out how early life could have started in this universe, and that's tomorrow's episode. And what run around through some scenarios for, like, if you migrated to another universe to escape the heat death, what that might look like. So,
well, you know what? I wanted to ask. Let's see if we can squeeze this in. Do you think that we will overcome the issues with Mars? Do you think we will colonize Mars? Do we have a choice?
I think we will, just because we really want to. I don't think it's the best candidate for colonization in many ways. Venus is better, or just a random asteroid. But I think we will. We want to. We want to do it, so we're going to do it. That's us.
See, the thing is, our fascination with it is because it's close. It kind of looks like Earth. Right? Kind of looks like mountains. It kind of looks... You can stand on it and
not die.
Yeah. It's almost... I think that's the fascination, but the other things that we have to overcome, because it's got a solid core. There is no protection from the sun, really. The temperature is something that really can't be overcome. Terraforming it... there's all of these issues with Mars. I just don't know if we will ever, have cities there.
Colonized than Antarctica will be. So, but maybe we'll colonize Antarctica. But it's just one of those things. It's going to be harder to colonize than Antarctica. But
okay, so what day of the week do you publish the new shows?
Thursday mornings. We should have it out about, usually about 9 a.m. on Thursday mornings, usually when the episodes come out.
How many people are involved with each production?
Oh, well, I mean, fundamentally, it's still a show of one, but we've had the same cover artist, Jacob Greigo, for 4 years now, and there's a lot of volunteers. And they come and they go on each end of the project. There's at least 100 people. I think we did the end of the year thank you one. It had like 100 people in it. So there's usually only about 5 or 6 involved in a given episode.
Just fantastic. Congratulations to your success. You deserve all of it. And just thank you so much. What another great conversation, Isaac. And just be safe out there. Wash your hands. Wear a face mask. And let's get through 2021 together, man. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me on, and have a great week, man.
You're the best. Isaac Arthur. Now, it's isaacarthur.net. Head over there. All the YouTube stuff, everything else is right there at isaacarthur.net. And that wraps Pole to Pole, another episode of Fade to Black. And tomorrow night is Open Lines. Open Lines. Tomorrow night's Fader Night. I am your host, Jimmy Church. What a great... I just enjoyed tonight, and I needed it. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Camurian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Kevin. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vito, and Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and syndication is KGRA, The Planet. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2021 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black of the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'll see everybody tomorrow night with Open Lines. It is Fader Night. It is Thursday. Until then, everybody be safe. Fade to Black.